For a written transcript of this meeting, or if you need reasonable accommodations, including this communication in an alternative format due to disability, please contact the Clerk to the Commission's office at 404-612-8232.
Good morning. How you doing? Hello. You ready? Madam Clerk? All right, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the regular meeting of the Fulton County Board of Commissioners. This is March 2nd, 10:02 a.m. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Chairman Rob Pitts.
Present.
Vice Chairman Liz Hausman.
Present.
Commissioner Bob Ellis. Present. Commissioner Lee Morris.
Present.
Commissioner Natalie Hall.
Present.
Commissioner Marvin Arrington Jr.
Present.
Commissioner Khadijah Abdul Rahman.
Present.
Mr. Chairman, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Please rise for the invocation, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
Let us pray. Almighty God, we are grateful for this day that you have given us. We pray now your peace and your power upon these, your people gathered. We give thanks for your keeping of us, your protection of us. We pray for those in Ukraine, We pray for the men, women, and children who are standing on the battle lines for their freedom. Bless now their leaders. We pray now you continue to shine your light upon our leaders. Give them wisdom and direction and courage. It is in your name that we humbly pray. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Please be seated. Madam Clerk.
On page 2, consent agenda. 22-0137, adoption of the consent agenda. All matters listed on the consent agenda are considered routine by the County Commission and will be enacted by one motion. No separate discussion will take place on these items. If discussion of any consent agenda item is desired, the item will be moved to the regular meeting agenda for separate consideration. Mr. Chairman and members of the board, we have one item to be moved to the regular meeting agenda on page 3. 22-0141, Select Fulton. Request approval of a resolution for a Fulton County Tax Allocation District review process for participation.
To the regular agenda?
It moved to the regular agenda, yes.
Okay. Any other items, Commissioners? All right, I entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as amended. A motion to approve by Commissioner Ellis, seconded by Commissioner Morris. Cast your vote, please.
And the vote is open. And motion passes unanimously. On page 3, regular meeting agenda, 22-0142, adoption of the regular meeting agenda. Mr. Chairman and members of the board, we have 2 proclamations to be removed from today's meeting and moved to March 16th as requested by Commissioner Hall. On page 4, proclamation recognizing National Nutrition Month and the proclamation recognizing Registered Dietitian Nutritionist Appreciation Day. Those will be moved to March 16th.
Anything else with respect to the agenda for today? Mr. Arrington?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like for items 22-0159 and 22-0162 to be heard together. They're both dealing with the Veterans Initiative.
What are the numbers, Commissioner?
22-0159 and 22-0162.
Okay,
That's fine.
together. Then, Madam Clerk, on page 6, is that right? Yeah, page 6, item 22-0155, where it says request approval, that should read, it's a presentation today, and I want just a presentation today because there's still some other information that I'm waiting for on that project or projects that I do not have yet. So we'll have the presentation today, but not action.
So noted.
All right. Anything else? All right, then a motion to entertain, rather motion to approve the regular agenda as amended. Motion to approve by Commissioner Morris, seconded by Vice Chair Houseman. Please vote.
And the vote is open. And the motion passes, 6 yeas, 0 nays. Unanimously with Vice Chair. 22-0143, ratification of minutes, regular meeting minutes, February 2nd, special call meeting post-agenda minutes, February 4th, and recess meeting post-agenda minutes, February 16th, 2022.
All right, motion to approve by Commissioner Ellis, seconded by Commissioner Hall. Please vote.
And the vote is open. And the motion passes unanimously. On page 4, 22-0144, presentation of proclamations and certificates. The first proclamation is recognizing Developmental Disabilities Awareness Month, sponsored by Chairman Pitts with full board support.
What is this? That's not correct. That's a full board. That's fine. All right, now listen, we have, we had 15, is it 15 proclamations? If you assume 5 minutes each, that's about an hour and 10 or 15 minutes just on
No,
proclamation.
Mr. Chair, if you would allow me.
Go ahead. So
Miss-
I know some of them have been removed.
Yeah, but what I'm going to do is, all of the women that are being honored today will come up together, and I will read only a portion of their proclamation for celebration of Women's History Month. They have all been made aware that this is how we'll present today.
Okay.
For the sake of time and to ensure that we do have a timely, do this in a timely
Excellent,
fashion.
excellent.
Okay.
You can always count on it. Excellent. Thank you. All right. That first one, though, is that a full board regarding diabetes?
Developmental disabilities. Okay.
I'll be glad to do this. All right. Yeah, we got some folks come over here to this side, so. How are you all doing? All right, good morning. right, I'm pleased to share this proclamation. Whereas in 1987, President Ronald Reagan proclaimed the month of March as Developmental Disabilities Awareness Month to increase public awareness of the needs and exceptional potential of Americans with intellectual developmental disabilities. And whereas intellectual developmental disabilities are a group of conditions due to an impairment in physical, learning, language, or behavior areas that began during the developmental period and may impact day-to-day functioning that usually lasts throughout a person's lifetime. And whereas Developmental Disability Awareness Month shines a spotlight on intellectual developmentally disabled individuals in every area of daily life and acknowledge their potential to serve as productive citizens in society, with this year's theme being In My Shoes. And whereas Fulton's Department of Behavioral Health and Developmental Disabilities promotes inclusion in all aspects of life because individuals with intellectual developmental disabilities are capable of living full and productive lives and deserving of opportunities to become more independent, economically self-sufficient, and contributing members of their communities. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Board of Commissioners of Fulton County recognizes the intellectual developmentally disabled as valuable members of the Fulton County community, encourages their inclusion in every facet of life in Metro Atlanta, and does hereby proclaim March 2022 as Developmental Disabilities Awareness Month in Fulton County, Georgia. All right, a round of applause. So, you gonna share a few remarks with us? All right, come on up here.
Thank you. I think I better put this down. Thank you. Good morning. As the medical director for the DD Division, and on behalf of the Fulton County Department of Behavioral Health and Developmental Disabilities and our director, we would like to extend our deepest gratitude to the County Commissioner's Office and the Board of Commissioners for your continued support and for the recognition of March as National Developmental Disabilities Awareness Month. As we mentioned, this year's theme is In My Shoes, which reflects the desire of individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities to be recognized and to be understood. To help raise awareness of their accomplishments, our department is collaborating with the Fulton County Department of Arts and Culture to develop and exhibit art by adults with intellectual and developmental disabilities. The exhibit will occur at the end of this month, so stay tuned. We do appreciate the forward-thinking policies that the board has implemented to create an inclusive and welcoming environment for all citizens, as these actions help to eliminate the stigma surrounding individuals and our citizens who are differently abled. For that, we extend our deepest gratitude. Thank you.
And I also want to get this thing back up here. Just one quick remark too. I also want to thank all of our Fulton County employees that work in this space. It can be a challenging space. It's a very rewarding space, I think, for all the folks that do work in there. But it can be very challenging, and we thank you for your dedication and the work that you do to make this happen, so that our citizens with developmental disabilities are included and are living a more fuller life. So we thank you. All right.
The next proclamation is recognizing Addiction Recovery Awareness Day, sponsored by Commissioner Hall and the full Board of Commissioners.
Come on up. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Good morning. It's good to see you. It is an honor, and it is also a personal matter for me as it relates to addiction. I have had family member who was very close to me struggle with addiction. So being a part of this and hearing all the stories about from the members of your board, your organization, have been tremendous help for so many others who struggle with addiction. Just to know that there are people who have been through those situations and have literally become successful on the other side of it is just outstanding for everyone to know about. So the proclamation reads, whereas behavioral health is an essential part of one's overall health and wellness, and the 13th Annual Addiction Recovery Awareness Day celebrates the power of recovery in everyday Georgians, showing that recovery is real and stronger than COVID-19. Whereas there are over 800,000 people in recovery across Georgia and over 23 million in the United States, and recovery from alcohol and other drug use occurs every day through a variety of recovery support resources and treatment programs. And whereas education about recovery and addiction is essential to combating the stigma and discrimination faced by people in recovery, is needed by all Georgians, including public health and safety officials, the workforce, older adults, and families. And whereas to help more people achieve and sustain long-term recovery, RISE, Recovery Community Organization, Recovery Resources of Atlanta, Midtown Recovery Community Organization, Peers Empowering Peers Recovery Community Organization, and the Georgia Council on Substance Abuse provide recovery support programs every day across Fulton County. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Fulton County Board of Commissioners supports this year's theme, Recovery is for everyone, every person, every family, every community, and does hereby proclaim Wednesday, March 2nd, 2022 as Addiction Recovery Awareness Day in Fulton County, Georgia. Congratulations, you guys.
Thank you, Commissioner, and thank you to the entire Board of Commissioners. My name is Jeff Breedlove, and I stand before you as a person in long-term recovery and a resident of Fulton County, and I'm proud to be joined by my brothers and sisters in recovery from those organizations you just heard of. And I thought about, well, what would I say? And here's what I want to say, two things. First of all, recovery is real. And the second thing I want to say is how appropriate that we're here this morning. Last night at the State of the Union, the President of the United States, for the first time that we can tell in history, acknowledged the recovery community when he said the phrase, "I celebrate the 23 million people in recovery." What a moment. And then to come here at our local community the very next day and receive a proclamation where our local leaders celebrate recovery. Y'all are breaking stigma. Y'all are saving lives. And your constituency, your families, we thank you, we respect you, and we love you. Recovery's real.
Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. I am Beverly Ragland. I'm a person in long-term recovery, and what that means for me, it's been nearly 23 years since I've had the need to use any drugs, alcohol, or succumb to my severe grief, anxiety, and depression. I live my recovery out loud because I believe in the benefit of everyone knowing that they deserve long-lasting quality recovery. I have a kaleidoscope philosophy about my recovery. There were many tools and many jewels that were in my life. I had treatment, counselors, people that supported me in my recovery. And they are the kaleidoscope, the jewels in my kaleidoscope, and I change them when I need to make my life different. And I live to be a jewel in somebody else's recovery kaleidoscope. I celebrate recovery, and I understand that recovery is real. Thank you.
My name is Alexia Jones, and I'm a person in long-term recovery. And what that means for me, it's been 27 years since I had a need or desire to use any mind-altering substances. It also means I'm a mother, a grandmother, and the executive director of RISE. And at RISE, we have found a new paradigm. We sing through our hardest times, we dance and celebrate our recovery, and we take up our paintbrushes and we paint our stories through every color of the rainbow. And we are so proud to be in the West End of Atlanta. Last year, we served 17,028 peer interactions. And we are so proud to be able to stand in Fulton County and raise the banner of recovery and welcome our peers into our center every single day. Thank you. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Paul Thompson. I'm also a person in long-term recovery. What that means to me has been over 22 years since I used any alcohol or drugs. I now I'm executive director of Peers Empowering Peers in Sandy Springs. You know, a lot of people say there's no drugs, alcohol in Sandy Springs, but I'm here to let you know there is. And we're there to help and to salute those who come in. Our peers that we help each and every day are something that I look forward to. It gives me energy every day. And I thank you, Commissioner, for everything you've done. The proclamation is needed, and we can get the support, and recovery is real. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Sean Mason. I'm Director of Community Engagement for Covenant Community and Recovery Resources of Atlanta Midtown. And I'm also a person in long-term recovery. For me, that means that it's been over 30 years since I've had the need to have any mind or mood-altering substances. I appreciate the opportunity to stand before you all today to show you that recovery is real and that it can be done. And to show everyone that hope is alive in the recovery community, and that with the efforts of everybody here, we'll continue to do the best that we can. Thank you.
You want to take a picture?
The next proclamation is recognized in Cascade Nature Girls Appreciation Day, sponsored by Commissioner Hall.
Let me just say greetings, everyone. It's a very beautiful and blessed good morning to each and every one of you. I'm your commissioner who believes in collaboration and not competition. With that being said, I'm going to ask all of the honorees to come down for Women's History Month. Cascade Nature Girls, Deborah Scott, Helen Butler, Mrs. Virginia Harris, and DA Fonnie Willis, and all your guests, because this is what people need to see in Fulton County and across America. Women coming together, standing together, supporting each other, working together, and doing what we do. There's a young man in the audience named Keith Lewis who has an organization called I'm a Father First, and their motto is collaboration over competition. And that is what this should always be, women standing strong together. So I'm going to ask Douglas, can you bring all of these proclamations, please, to me? I'm going to read a portion of every proclamation in honor of Women's History Month and appreciation to all of these women, from the Cascade Nature Girls, Deborah Scott, from Stand Up, Helen Butler. We have all of you, right? All right. Excellent. And District Attorney Fonnie Willis. All right. Excellent. So, Douglas, where are the other ones? You can just stack them right here. We're going to go through every single one of them. See, that's what togetherness looks like. All right. The first one is for the Cascade Nature Girls. And that's these beautiful women with the Nature Girls hoodies on around me. Yes, aren't they wonderful and beautiful? Whereas the Cascade Nature Girls were founded on April 15th, 2020, when two friends and longtime neighbors decided to visit the Cascade Springs Nature Preserve for the first time during the early days of the COVID-19 lockdown. And whereas the beautiful scenery and the flowing water of the springs led the friends to invite others and friends to experience the beauty and tranquility of the nature preserve. And the very next day and the days that follow, more and more ladies joined the excursion. That's togetherness. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Fulton County Board of Commissioners, in commemoration of Women's History Month, recognizes the Cascade Nature Girls for their innovative spirits and for the dedication to improvement and beautification of their community, and does hereby proclaim Wednesday, March 2nd, 2022 as Cascade Nature Girls Appreciation Day in Fulton County, Georgia. And I'm just going to ask you to hold that while I move to the next one. Yes, yes, togetherness. And the next proclamation reads, whereas Helen Butler is a native of Morgan County, Georgia, and graduated from Pearl High School in Madison as a National Merit Scholar and as her class salutatorian, I'm sorry. Sorry about that, Miss Butler. Whereas Helen was one of the first 50 African-American students to attend the University of Georgia after its integration by Charlene Hunter Galt and Hamilton E. Holmes, and earned her Bachelor of Business Administration degree in accounting. And whereas Helen is a charter member of the Zeta Psi chapter of Delta Sigma Theta sorority at the University of Georgia, a member of the Mount Zion, I heard somebody say, okay now, a member of the Mount Zion Missionary Baptist Church, and she is the recipient of the City of Atlanta's highest honor, the Phoenix Award. And she was named an outstanding Georgia citizen by the Secretary of State in 2009. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Fulton County Board of Commissioners commend Helen Butler for her tireless work and dedication for the rights of Georgia citizens in commemoration of Women's History Month, and does hereby proclaim Wednesday, March 2nd, 2022 as Helen Butler Appreciation Day in Fulton County, Georgia. You're so welcome. And the next proclamation reads, whereas Deborah Scott is the founding executive director, CEO of Georgia Stand Up, a think and act tank for working families and a nationally recognized proponent of civic education and community power, mentor to a rising generation of activists and engaged leadership, and a builder of impactful institutions, including the Movement Center, a multi-purpose facility that serves as a hub for progressive ideas and collaboration across the South. And whereas Deborah plays a key role in community development through her championing of affordable housing, accessible transit, and investment in human infrastructure, and through the founding of Trade Up, which prepares marginalized individuals for skilled construction of jobs, through her elevation of civic affairs by founding the Policy Institute of Civic Leadership, and by training and molding a new wave of social activists through speeches and motivational talks. And whereas Deborah is a proud member of the inaugural 1988 graduating class of Clark Atlanta University, and is a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, now therefore be it resolved that the Fulton County Board of Commissioners commends Deborah Scott in commemoration of Women's History Month for her dedication to the civil liberties of all citizens, and does hereby proclaim Wednesday, March 2nd, 2022 as Deborah Scott Appreciation Day in Fulton County, Georgia. Yes, ma'am. And the next proclamation reads, whereas Fonnie T. Willis is the first woman elected to serve as district attorney in Fulton County, Georgia, beginning her term on January 1st, 2021. And whereas before D.A. Willis assumed her current role, she was a prosecutor and a career trial lawyer for 25 years and has led over 100 jury trials and has prosecuted hundreds of murder cases as well as many other serious crimes, including those against women and children. And whereas D.A. Willis created Fulton County's first pre-indictment diversion program, which gives offenders who would benefit from a second chance the opportunity to earn one. She also is partnering with community organizations to give those offenders the opportunity to gain life skills and the responsibility that comes from community service to have a better path forward than one marred by a criminal record. And whereas D.A. Willis earned her bachelor's degree from Howard University and her Juris Doctorate degree from Emory University School of Law, I hear people saying, all right now. She is the proud mother of 2 daughters who are both HBCU graduates and a resident of the city of South Fulton, where she had the honor of serving as chief judge of the municipal court. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Fulton County Board of Commissioners, in commemoration of Women's History Month, recognizes District Attorney Fonnie T. Willis for her stellar career and trailblazing role as the first woman district attorney of Fulton County, and does hereby proclaim Wednesday, March 2nd, 2022, as District Attorney Fonnie T. Willis Appreciation Day in Fulton County, Georgia. And last but not least, whereas the National Coalition of 100 Black Women Incorporated was founded in 1981 in New York City and is an advocacy organization whose vision is that Black women and girls will live in a world where socioeconomic inequity does not exist. And whereas NCBW advocates on behalf of Black women and girls to promote leadership development and gender equity in the areas of health, education, economic development, and public policy advocacy actions. And whereas during the fiscal year 2020-2021, more than 19,500 youth were served in mentoring and STEM programs, more than 175,000 individuals attended workshops and training events, over $800,000 in local scholarships were awarded to students in financial need, and more than 75,000 people were served via voter registration, strategic partnerships, and community forums. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Fulton County Board of Commissioners, in commemoration of Women's History Month, recognizes the National Coalition of 100 Black Women Incorporated for their positive impact on their local communities and beyond, and does hereby proclaim Wednesday, March 2nd, 2022 as 100 Black Women Appreciation Day in Fulton County, Georgia. All right. And Miss Virginia Harris, we will hold this award for you when you get here to give it to you. All right, and we need to move this out of the way. Uh-oh. Here comes Douglas.
Testing, testing, testing.
Good morning, Chairman Pitts, Commissioner Arrington, who is also the son of a nature girl.
Here you go, Cecilia.
My Commissioner Natalie Hall and our honorary nature girl, Commissioner Abdul Rahman. And all the esteemed members of the Fulton County Commission. On behalf of the Nature Girls, we're extremely humbled by this recognition this morning. I am Cecilia Houston Torrance, the co-founder. 2 years ago, my friend, Sonia Young, who stands with me today, encouraged me to walk at the park right across the street from her home in Southwest Atlanta, and I did. It's amazing to think that out of necessity, a group of like-minded women, some married, some divorced, some widowed, and some single, all of various backgrounds, denominations, sororities, political affiliations, professions, races, and yes, we even root for different sports teams. We all came together, yet with all of our differences, we have bonded in a way that I've never dreamed possible without actually having to form a 501c3 and get incorporated. As stated in the proclamation, this sisterhood sustained us during the most troubling times as the country was dealing with mass protests over the senseless murder of George Floyd and the pandemic, where we were forced to do something most people hated and dreaded, especially teenagers. We were compelled to isolate from our family and friends. The Nature Girls pray, walk, hike, stroll, stumble, fall, get back up, debate, dance, celebrate, sing, and most importantly, we laugh and take in the beautiful scenery and fresh air there at the majestic Cascade Springs Nature Preserve. And yes, sometimes we even cry, and as we face realities of aging and dealing with health challenges. But one thing is certain, we always leave better than we did before we came. As my dear friend and Nature Girl sister Sue Ross, who has documented much of our history by capturing it with her amazing photography since she was a little girl, well, let me just say younger, because she's still little. You just don't know at the time you're a part of history. You just do the work and take the pictures. As we celebrate Women's History Month today in this chamber, we stand here on the shoulders of our grandmothers, mothers, aunts, and so many other strong role models. And I have a whole page of names, and I'm not going to read them. The Nature Girls are a testimony to the power of resilience and transition. Please come and join us. Thank you, Commissioner Hall.
You're welcome. You're very welcome.
So I just wanted to thank Commissioner Hall for all her advocacy. Thank you to all the Black women that helped to get the vote out. We stand on your shoulders, so if you are the unnamed Mrs. Jackson and Ms. Johnson, we are here for you and we celebrate you today. Thank you.
To Commissioner Pitts and to Commissioner Hall, Arrington, and all of the Commissioners, thank you. Everybody, we just thank you for this honor. And on behalf of an ancestor that has gone on, Rita Jackson Samuels, who always fought for the rights of Black women, we stand here today to celebrate all Black women across the state, but to celebrate women who stand for our community. And we just say thank you for this honor. It was so wonderful seeing you Saturday night with the Boss Girls. And we are just honored by you passing on the legacy of so many. And thank you so much.
Well, first of all, I want to thank Chair Pitts, Vice Chair Natalie, the Mighty Six, Khadijah, my classmate and very good friend, Commissioner Arrington, Commissioner Hausman, who was the very first commissioner to reach out to me when I was elected to kind of show me the way and help me. And of course, Commissioner Morris and Commissioner Lee. I feel very, very humbled to be recognized today. And one of the things I'm most proud of in life is being the first woman district attorney. And I know that I don't do it alone. And I'll come up here and argue with you, but I really do have a lot of love and appreciation for the way you all support the county and support the district attorney's office. But it's really not my award. If you'll just give me a minute, I'd like to ask a couple of people here to be recognized. My legal counsel for the DA, who gets frustrated with me but keeps me straight, Mr. Don Geary. my Executive District Attorney, Michael Carlson, my Executive District Attorney, George Jenkins, my Deputy District Attorney, Kevin Armstrong, Deputy Legal Assistant, Felicia Dickens, Chief Legal Assistant, Valencia Younger, Deputy District Attorney, Dexter Bond, my Chief of Investigations, Caper Green, as well as my Assistant Chief, Thomas Ricks, who in these times has a really hard job, and his whole job is to keep me alive. So we gotta give him a lot of love, and he makes sure that he does that. And my two bosses, my Director of Technology, Tashika, my Deputy District Attorney over Strategy and Media, Jeff DeSantis, and my two bosses, Executive Assistant Jasmine Dilligard, and my number one boss, Deputy Executive Assistant Tia Green. I get a lot of credit and a lot of spotlight and a lot of news media and courage, but I'm a team and a real little funny looking family. We're white, black, straight, gay, Republican, Democrat, but we all have one mission, and that's to keep this county safe. And I do it with these men and women, and I'm just humbled that they let me serve as their district attorney. So thank you for acknowledging us. Thank you for acknowledging my team, because it's their credit, not mine. And just thank you for having us today.
I just want to acknowledge City Council President Doug Shipman is here. He is actually here to support Women's History Month and the Nature Girls. All right, thank you so much, ladies. And let's continue to work together. Oh. Well, can Fonnie's people run down here real quick, please? Let's get one good big picture with the Board of Commissioners, the full Board of Commissioners, and all the ladies for Women's History Month. Okay, you need to get up here.
I'm in the group.
Okay,
Like
okay.
what Fonnie said, we are all in this together.
Okay, you're so, we can't see you.
Come on up here. Come on up here. Be good. Let's just. Nobody's blocked. And you come up here. Nobody's blocked.
She needs to be up there.
Nobody's blocked. Let's
You can see me in the back. You can see me.
Can you see the?
You ready?
You got your phone, see?
And we're out.
Atlanta Daily World. All right. Thank you so much, ladies. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Hey, I'm good. Stay in place, because y'all are going to be set.
Stay in place.
Oh.
Stay in place, Nature Girl. Please, Nature Girl, stay in place.
The next proclamation is recognizing Mayor Shirley Franklin Appreciation Day, sponsored by Commissioner Abdul Rahman.
I want to take this time. I had an opportunity to speak to the recipient. Unfortunately, our former Mayor Shirley Franklin couldn't be here today, but the Nature Girls and Sue Ross will accept her proclamation.
but she wanted me to state this this morning at the beginning of the proclamation. We lost an icon, and I'm gonna try to get through this without crying. We lost the icon, Simon Baby, this morning. And he's a good friend of my family. He was part of Cousins with Cancer, DJ Mix Maxter Mitch. We lost him earlier this summer. And now we've lost Simon. And I know he's up there making the angel sing, saying, Simon, baby. And so Shirley wanted to make sure that we took a moment to recognize Simon. Thank you. Whereas Shirley Franklin is the 58th mayor of the city of Atlanta, Georgia, and the first woman to hold the post and the first black woman elected mayor of a major southern city. And whereas Mayor Franklin is originally from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, is a graduate of the Philadelphia High School for Girls, and earned her Bachelor of Arts degree in sociology from Howard University and her Master of Arts degree in sociology from the University of Pennsylvania. And whereas prior to her role as mayor, Shirley Franklin served as the Commissioner of Cultural Affairs under Mayor Maynard Jackson, and she was named Chief Administrative Officer and City Manager under Mayor Andrew Young. And whereas during 2 terms as mayor, Shirley Franklin led the effort to have the papers of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. given to his alma mater, Morehouse College, instead of being sold at auction. She is also the recipient of the Profile Encourage Award issued by the John F. Kennedy Library Foundation, and she received a Doctor of Humane Letters degree from Oglethorpe University. And whereas Mayor Franklin is the chairman of the board and CEO of Purpose Built Communities and the Barbara Jordan Visiting Professor in Ethics and Political Values in the LBG School of Public Affairs at the University of Texas at Austin, and a loyal member of the Nature Girls. Now therefore be it resolved that the Fulton County Board of Commissioners, in commemoration of Women's History Month, recognize Mayor Shirley Franklin for her trailblazing and historic career and for her tireless dedication to the citizens of Atlanta, and does hereby proclaim Wednesday, March 2nd, 2022 as Mayor Shirley Franklin Appreciation Day in Fulton County, Georgia. This proclamation has full support from the Board of Commissioners. Please give her a round of applause. I'm going to ask for Sue Ross on behalf of the Nature Girls to please give comments, followed by the President of Atlanta City Council, Doug Shipman.
I'm very honored to accept this proclamation on behalf of Mayor Franklin. She was unable to participate because she's participating in a panel leading up to the 90th birthday of former Mayor Ambassador Andrew Young, and she expresses her appreciation for this honor, and she walks with the Nature Girls regularly, and so we talk politics, registered voters, we do all kinds of things, but she continues to contribute to the political well-being of the citizens of Atlanta and Fulton County, and she is very grateful for this honor from Commissioner Khadijah of the Mighty Six.
And Nature Girls get people elected too. She didn't put that in there, but I'm gonna put that in there. Come on, Doug.
Well, good morning. I just want to briefly say, I wanted to walk across the street because sometimes we can see the contributions of folks. I had the honor of working side by side with Mayor Franklin on the effort to secure the King Papers. And sometimes we don't see the efforts of folks, but I have personally gotten to know the Nature Girls individually over the years, but as a group over the last 2 years. This is a health, environmental protection, political, community advocacy, friendship organization. So much happens because of the work of these women standing here who are connected to each other in this unique way that we often don't see, but we feel. And so I just want to say on behalf of the citizens of Atlanta, thank you for all that you do as individuals and all that you do so much more as a collective group of the Nature Girls.
Thank you. Chairman, did you want to say anything? Okay. All right, and one more. We have one more proclamation. Did you want to go up to in expediency of time? We have one more proclamation. Stay still because we want the picture. But basically, I will just kind of paraphrase this. This proclamation is honoring Women's History Month highlights. This is a full board proclamation, whereas Women's History Month highlights the contributions of women in history and contemporary society and is celebrated during the month of March in United States, Great Britain, and Australia, with corresponds with International Women's Day on March 8th. And whereas Women's History Month traces its beginnings back to the first International Women's Day in 1911, and in February 1980, President Jimmy Carter issued a presidential proclamation declaring the week of March 8th, 1980 as National Women's History Month. And you can see clearly here with board participation and Commissioner Natalie Hall as well as others. This was a collaborative effort today to recognize all of these wonderful women who have given tirelessly to this community, and we all have supported them on the Women's History Month. And I would like to have a round of applause for women who tirelessly, the ones that you see, but more importantly, the ones that are unseen. So can we please have a round of applause, and please wait for pictures. You're welcome. If we can get a picture, y'all just hold tight. I don't want that to fall. Okay, there we go.
Hey, no, it's all good.
Can I go? The last proclamation is recognizing Busy Bee Restaurant Appreciation Day, sponsored by Chairman Pitts.
Yeah, send a reflection. Okay. Marvin, you doing? She may not be here.
Okay.
But we'll take it to her.
The last proclamation is recognizing Busy Bee Restaurant Appreciation Day, sponsored by Chairman Pitts.
All right. Happy to read this proclamation. As the Nature Girls see themselves out, we thank you so much for being here with us today. This next proclamation is one y'all know about too. It's for Busy Bee Restaurant. Whereas Busy Bee Restaurant was established in 1974 by Lucy Jackson, a self-taught cook who named her restaurant after seeing a picture of a bee on a large sign and felt inspired. After a missionary thoroughly enjoyed Lucy's cooking, she predicted that her business would always be busy and blessed, hence the name Busy Bee. And whereas the Southwest Atlanta restaurant, located on Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Drive, has been a staple in the city for 75 years as a gathering spot for civil rights leaders, including Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Reverend Ralph David Abernathy, Reverend Hosea Williams, Ambassador Andrew Young, and Reverend Joseph E. Lowry. And whereas Busy Bee Restaurant was named one of 6 recipients of the 2022 James Beard Award, which is awarded annually to locally owned restaurants with exceptional talent in the culinary arts and reflect the character of the communities that they serve. And whereas Busy Bee Restaurant is currently owned by Tracy Gates, whose family took over the business in the early 1980s. She will accept the award at the James Beard Restaurant and Chef Awards ceremony on June 13th in Chicago. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Fulton County Board of Commissioners recognizes Busy Bee Restaurant for its outstanding legacy as one of the most recognizable and favorite community gathering spots, as well as popular tourist destination in the city, and does hereby proclaim Wednesday, March 2nd, 2022, as Busy Bee Restaurant Appreciation Day in Fulton County, Georgia. And she wasn't able to join us this morning, but we will certainly make sure that she receives it. You want to take a picture? No, that's fine. We got enough pictures.
It's almost 11 o'clock, colleagues. Madam Clerk.
Bottom of page 4, public hearings, 22-0145, public comment. Citizens wishing to participate in public comment will be allowed to appear in person or may choose to participate virtually via Zoom video conferencing or by submitting their comments in writing online by registering on the county website, www.fultoncountyga.gov. Speakers will be granted up to 2 minutes each. The public will not be allowed to yield or donate time to other speakers. The public comment portion of the meeting will not exceed 30 minutes. In the event the 30-minute time limit is reached prior to public comments being completed, public comment will be suspended and the business portion of the BOC meeting will commence. Public comment will resume at the end of the meeting. Mr. Chairman and members of the board, we will start with the speakers here in Assembly Hall. We have received 3 speaker cards. Will the 3 speakers please come down? Maggie Goldman, Lucia Frazier, and Sandra Burkhart.
Come on down. Again, when you have 15 seconds remaining, I'll simply say 15 seconds.
Not used to being first. So my name is Maggie Goldman, District 1, Johns Creek. So I'm glad to see that there are the community service program grants on the agenda today. Those are probably one of my core favorite parts of the budget. So we definitely want to approve those. And I'm going to be interested to see, where we could potentially expand on those, because I think those are the programs that really touch our families the most and where we could potentially do some more work there. I'd also like to see if we can, again, look at the county budget before we pass the millage rate. I'm going to keep coming here and talking about this until we do something about this. I'm not saying you have to spend more money. I want you to confirm ahead of the millage rate that we are paying for everything that we need to pay for. How many departments have to come in front of us and beg for money for staff? Off the top of my head, the Sheriff's Department, the DA's office, who would we have last time? The IT department, the tax commissioner's office. Now, I'll admit, we got to do something about the extra money the tax commissioner is getting. Maybe we can reallocate that. I don't disagree. What happened to Dwight Robinson? He's gone. I was at the BOE the other day. The director of the Board of Equalization is gone. Like, where are these staff? Why can't we retain staff? Do we need to pay more? The fact that you work for a government agency might be an appealing part of your resume, as Commissioner Pitts mentioned the last meeting, but that is not going to put food on your table. That's not going to pay your college debt. That is not going to put a roof over your head. Thank you.
Lucia Frazier. Last meeting, I was shocked to see more temp agencies added to use in our election. I just didn't realize that Happy Faces was terminated. So they had so many things wrong. It's really great that they're removed. When you voted to extend their contract in January, you acted like it was impossible to remove them, but I guess that wasn't true. So going forward, I would love to see the same quick adjustment in removing temp agencies while increasing direct hires. And on that note, the reason why we should have more direct hires, let's use more direct hires to handle all aspects of people touching our ballots. And for that, we would need more open enrollment in order to have residents doing these jobs, residents that don't normally do these jobs, so that everyone has the opportunity for civic duty. Therefore, the open enrollment should be broken out into 1 to 5 day increments. I haven't seen that on the website yet. Hope it's coming. I also want to reiterate how odd and ludicrous the budget was allocated this year. Several people come here in every meeting for public comment requesting funds for various human support programs. You have pretty much voted to rob everyone and everything that might better our county and gave it all to the elections department. It doesn't add up to me to spend $18 million in 2020 and $37 million in 2022. There are no new capital expenses. If it costs this much to have electronic voting, it seems easy to make it a case to go back to paper only and then reallocate these funds back to the taxpayers or to the community programs that are in here every month.
15 seconds.
That's it. Thank you very much.
My name is Sandra Burkhart. I live in Fulton County. I am a freedom-loving human being. It is a love without color or political party or gender. It is a love based on truth. In order for freedom to prevail, some things are vital: laws and legitimate elections. Commissioner Pitts, do you think some people consider other factors more important than laws and legitimate elections? Do some people ignore laws and use political power and money to manipulate others to ignore the laws and deliver candidates? Some people think they are winning using these tactics, and they have been successful in delivering their choices through use of ballots filled up with their selections that are dropped off in drop boxes earning $10 a ballot, or stored in large containers under skirted tables, scanning perhaps multiple times after the observers are told that the counting is over. Now, all of us are living with the results of their selections. Should we congratulate them? Are they proud of their successes? Do they like the current rising gas prices? Is it better to buy more expensive oil from Russia? Do they like the increased numbers of homelessness? They're living in tents all over Atlanta. Do they prefer this higher unemployment rate? How about the human trafficking and the drug situation at our open borders? Is this part of the winning vision? I will not stand aside, and I will not allow these tactics to continue. I will continue to do all that I can to return our country to a place where laws matter and honest elections are transparent,
15 seconds.
where an audit does not consist of recounting the mysterious ballots stored under tables. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman and members of the board, we have 16 speakers on Zoom.
16.
Yes.
Good morning, Commissioners. The first person to speak will be Bridget Thorne.
Hello, Commissioners. I'm confused. Last year, several times we were told by Richard Barron that Happy Faces Temp Agency was the only agency that could handle our elections. The matter was time sensitive, and it would take 4 to 6 months to onboard another agency, which wasn't possible. You approved the $7.7 million contract. Again, on January 19th, Patrick Eskridge gave another presentation that Happy Faces Temp Agency was the only agency that could handle our elections. The matter was again time sensitive. Happy Faces was the only solution, and you approved it. Yet, all of a sudden, on February 16th, you approved a new slate of temp agency contracts, and suddenly you can onboard a new company with a month and a half before an election. So there was another temp agency, and it doesn't take 4 to 6 months to onboard. Were we lied to? We ask that you be transparent and tell the public why there is this drastic shift. We need absolute transparency in our election process. Currently, all the former Happy Faces workers are being shifted over to Dover. Will anything change? These temp workers can easily slip in and out of our election process undetected and jeopardize the security of our election process. We can't use temp agencies for positions that handle and count our votes. I find it puzzling. Why did Fulton election employee Dominique Olamo quit working for Dominion in August of 2020 and then start working for Happy Faces? Why? Was he being paid by Happy Faces and
15
Dominion?
seconds.
Remember finding 4 in the internal audit. Dominion employees were being paid $2,000 per day and $5,000 for election day. Dominique was running the warehouse when the normal staff had to be quarantined in October 2020. He was wearing a Dominion employee badge.
Thank you. Thank you. Next speaker.
The next person to speak is Matt Rowenzak.
Good morning, Commissioners. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great, thanks. Couple points this morning. One is, when are folks that have applied to work Elections Day going to be contacted by the Elections Department? Some already have, but I'm curious as to why so many have not. And the reason why I'm asking the questions to you all is because we can't seem to get answers from the BRE or from the department. You know, the most recent thing that happened at the BRE is public comment was eliminated for special meetings. And again, there's nothing special about these meetings. All it is a second meeting within the same month. Secondly, there were many comments in the last meeting about fully funding the elections department. And it sounded like many of those folks were reading from a script and a piece of paper. I'm curious if those folks are actually aware of the amount of money and the excess that is being spent in the elections department. The $37 million that's proposed actually isn't fully representative of what it's likely to be in 2022. The full amount is 48 million because in that 37 million does not include a primary runoff in May or June. So we're really talking about, and we know that that's very likely to happen. So again, we're talking almost $50 million, which is more than we spent in 2020, which includes federal funding for COVID and grant money, which is not needed in 2022. So again, if the dollar amount was $100 million, would those same folks come and ask for the elections department to be fully funded?
15 seconds.
It's time that we responsibly look at these dollars and spend them wisely. And again, return them to other departments where it's needed or the taxpayer. Thank you.
The next person to speak is Ingina Sidney Jamont. and Gina Sidney Germont. Okay, the next person to speak will be Ben Howard.
Greetings, commissioners and staff, and greetings to you citizens of Fulton County. Ben Howard, Senior Advocate, Public Policy Analyst. To the members of the Fulton County Commission on Elder Affairs, I take this opportunity to address you publicly so you will know it is not my intent to frighten you, as they have said, but enlighten you, as they should be doing. Instead of letting you believe you can operate outside of the Georgia Sunshine Laws, why hasn't Senior Services given each of you a copy of the Georgia Open Meetings Act so you can read that state law yourselves? Regarding my comment about the January agenda being posted on the county website during your Commission on Elder Affairs meeting in February, here's what the Association of County Commissioners of Georgia says on page 19 of their open meetings publication. The law requires notice to be posted on the county website. It goes on to say, if a website is not being maintained, it may be best to eliminate the website rather than provide erroneous information. That's ACCG talking, not Ben Howard, Senior Advocate.
The next person to speak is Heather Fluker. Heather Fluker. I'm sorry. The next person to speak is Joseph Blunt.
Good morning. I'm Joe Blunt, a resident of Fulton County, District 4. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I encourage our commissioners to support the Board of Elections by giving them the resources they require. Recent elections have demonstrated the progress that the Board of Elections has made toward improving access to the ballot box. The Board of Elections must have the time and space needed to continue to make improvements, and they should focus on the search for a new director. I thank the commissioners for their attention to these matters, and thank you for your service to the citizens of Fulton County.
The next person to speak is Kevin Muldowney.
Hello. Quite a few of the public comments given last meeting, especially over Zoom, sounded quite scripted. The common theme was fully fund Fulton County's election department. The fact is that since 2016, the BRE's funding has increased from $10 to $37 million, an increase of almost 300%. It seems to me the BRE is more than adequately funded. What we need is efficient use of that bloated budget. The BRE's reliance on temp agencies is one example of that inefficiency. Temp agencies typically charge the client, in this case, Fulton County citizens, another 50% on top of what they pay the employee. That doesn't really sound efficient to me. History has shown us that temp agencies' employees are typically undertrained and less than motivated. I hate to sound like a broken record, but we need to staff our elections from early voting to the final election day directly with citizens that have a vested interest in fair and accurate elections. Speaking of citizens, the BRE relies on a full-time employee to tabulate and adjudicate votes. This employee, Dominic Olamo, the BRE's information system manager, is not even a US citizen. We don't need mercenaries in positions of power to run our elections. We need conscientious citizens that care about an accurate and fair election process. One other point I wanted to make, I've worked as a poll manager in the past, and most of the tasks we perform were necessary to fill the needs of this complex computerized election system. Going back to paper ballots would simplify this complex process that we have created and restore a lot more confidence in the vote. Thank you, guys.
The next person to speak is Laurie DeMorris. Lowry DeMarest. Okay, the next person to speak is Linda Downing. Linda Downing. Okay, the next person to speak is Njima Sidney Jamat.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Wonderful. I'm happy my computer's working now. So good morning. My name is Dr. Jamat, and I've been a resident of Fulton County for 10 years. I'm going to echo some of the other public comments. I encourage the Fulton Board of Commissioners to support the Board of Elections by giving them the resources they need to sufficiently staff the 2022 cycle. Last year's municipal elections demonstrated the progress the Board of Elections has made toward improving access to the ballot box. We need to make sure that the Board of Elections has the time and space to continue to improve. The Board of Elections should focus on the search for a new elections director and not be distracted from its important work. In conclusion, thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak about the importance of the Board of Commissioners supporting the Board of Elections in their continued effort to improve access to voting for all Georgians.
The next person to speak is Miss Marika.
Good morning. My name is Marika, and I am a Fulton County resident of District 4. I encourage the Fulton County Board of Commissioners to support the Board of Elections by giving them the resources they need to sufficiently staff the 2022 cycle. Last year's municipal elections demonstrated the progress the Board of Elections has made toward improving access to the ballot box. We need to make sure that the Board of Elections has the time and space to continue to improve. The Board of Elections should focus on the search for a new elections director and not be distracted from its important work. Thank you for your time and giving me the opportunity to speak.
The next person to speak is Michelle Otterbach. Michelle Ottersbach. Okay. Next person to speak is Ms. Rowe. Ms. Rowe.
Yes, good morning. Interesting. I had actually submitted my comment in written form and that went through, but since I've been given the floor, I've just been attending these meetings and mystified that we've gone from one temp agency to 3. So it seems like the comments that people have been given before are either ignored or don't matter. And it's hard to believe that. I see you all come dedicate your time to meet and consider what is best for Fulton County. And so it's a little mystifying because I know you mean well. It seems to me that the message has been that there are Fulton County residents who'd be very excited and willing to work the elections and or volunteer. People are asking for more money, but from what I've heard, there's millions in the coffers for elections. I really trust that Fulton County, for example, Human Resources, can come up with solutions to hire these people. And I really trust that Fulton County has staff members who can solve this. So we want to be proud of Fulton County elections, and that's why we're giving comments. Some people are even asking for more money. Well, if more money meant that we'd get better results and that we get more transparency, well, maybe that's the solution. I don't know. It seems that we have plenty of knowledge, ideas, people. I'm not sure if there's will. Perhaps there's not the will to have a solution to these elections. The eyes of the nation are in Fulton County. So it's not just Fulton County residents who are concerned about this. And I think Fulton County can take advantage of its size and of its mass, let's put it this way, to actually lead the nation. That's all I have to say. Thank you so much.
Next person to speak is Heather Fluker.
Hi, yes, I dropped my comment in the chat because earlier my audio wasn't working. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, I ended up putting my comment in the chat. I encourage the Fulton Board of Commissioners to support the Board of Elections by giving them the resources they need to sufficiently staff the 2022 cycle. last year's municipal elections demonstrate the progress the Board of Elections has made toward improving access to the ballot box. We need to make sure that the Board of Elections has the time and space to continue to improve. The Board of Elections should focus on the search for a new elections director and not be distracted from its important work. Thank you.
The next person to speak is Ramona Hassan. Ramona Hassan. Okay, the next person to speak is Sheila Hamilton. Sheila Hamilton.
Good morning, Commissioners. Good morning.
Yes,
we can hear you.
I just want to thank the commissioners for the work they are doing. I applaud Commissioner Pitts for being on TV yesterday trying to secure affordable housing in Fulton County. It is something that really needs serious attention, as well as addressing the homelessness situation in Fulton County. It disturbs me when I drive into Fulton County and there are people living under bridges, on streets, and under tents. Please, in your budget, consider increasing funding for homelessness and finding ways that senior citizens and people of low income can have affordable housing. Thank you for allowing me the time to speak.
The last one is Zach Hines. Zach Hines. Okay, I'm not hearing anything from Zach Hines. That concludes our Zoom portion of the public comment.
Thank you. Anyone at the annexes?
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, we have 3 emailed in comments.
The first comment is from Carissa Ko. There is something extremely sinister when victims of hate crimes can't get the crimes classified as such and are given no updates in Fulton County. I can't even find the arrest warrant that was supposed to be issued on a man named Stephen Meldrum Knight, a stranger who violated my protected order multiple times. He works for Knight Construction, and yet no one knows a thing about him. I am tired of reading about arguments escalating into gunfire when there would be no need for these arguments if degenerates were made to follow the law. I am not fighting anyone at my age. I am a concealed carrier holder and will do whatever I need to do to keep hands off of me. Just tell us the truth. No one gives a darn about the peace and safety and right of citizens to live free to interference, and we are basically on our own because that's what everyone is used to. Instead of calling these garbage people out, do I need to get in contact with to hold the people who attempted to harass and kill my husband because he's Asian? The information that I need, and to make sure they are held accountable, because yet again, no one knows anything. Not how to charge people, not how to get the GBI, not how to make property owners feel safe on their property. Fulton County is completely lawless, and it will only get worse as more people get sick of their non-response. This county has shown me that the living God is in none of our hearts because your actions speak volumes. The next 2 comments deal with the elections. My name is Candace Stockham, and I am a resident from District 5. I would like to know if the BOC has made sure that we will have significant funding and staffing for the entire voting cycle of 2022. The next comment is by Susan Ortiz. I just saw a job posted for election system specialist. There is no mention that you must be a U.S. citizen to apply. That is unacceptable for a job so important in one of the most cherished rights of our great republic. Also, in the last Board of Commissions meeting, it was clear to me that there were some organized Zoom callers reading comments almost verbatim from a script. These were not legitimate concerns from community experience with the elections. I heard things echoed like, don't be distracted by people or politically motivated, and we need to fully fund the elections. I think it is fair to say that wanting transparent, fair elections is a universal desire, not a partisan one, as it is not wanting our taxpayer money wasted. I am seeing some positive changes happening, though, like a poll worker fair coming up in Alpharetta to have questions answered, much like the meet and greet I have been talking about.
Thank you. There are still a lot of questions like why are 3 personnel agencies better than 1? Who dreamt up the goal to diversify the tempting staff? I would like to rather see a no tempting service agency. The county should do its job in hiring poll workers, and I hope there are more fairs in the major cities to aid with that and to bring the elections back to the hands of locals. But it doesn't stop here. Where these diverse staffing agencies result in diversity of people who you hire for counting of mail-in ballots, the warehouse work, and all aspects of elections, that remains to be seen, and all eyes will be on this. Finally, I watched the COVID portion of the last meeting online and thought I was watching an old rerun from March of 2020. Nothing has changed. Not one word of hope for your constituents about how helpful vitamin D and C and zinc are. To my fellow citizens, may I suggest you go to myfreedoctor.com. That concludes the announcements.
No further
Nothing else. All right, let's continue. We have 1 hour on proclamations and 30 minutes on public comment.
On page 5, presentations to the board, 22-0146, Marta quarterly update.
All right. Good morning, sir.
Good morning. Thank you, Chairman Pitts, and good morning, commissioners. My name is Collie Greenwood. I'm the interim general manager and CEO for Marta.
Who do you have with you?
With me is board member Frida Hartage. Also online, board member Al Pond and board member Stacy Blakely. Also Colleen Kiernan and Manjit Renu are in the room from our executive staff.
Thank you.
Next slide, please. So for the agenda, I'm just going to quickly go through a couple of operational updates and speak to the Marta 2040 capital expansion. Next slide. As we go through operations updates, next slide, I will start with what we call the lifeblood of the transit agency is our ridership, workforce, and financials. In terms of ridership, you can see that through 2021, there was a slight incline in the numbers. By the time we got to near the end of the year, we saw a dip, which is a seasonal dip combined with exacerbation from the Omicron variant. However, if this were to extend throughout the month of February, you would see that all modes are now stable and starting to rise again. In terms of workforce, we still have approximately 180 operators shortage in terms of bus operators. The good news is that the recruitment of operators has been going well, and we are more than 250 operators now in the pipeline, or applicants in the pipeline to be vetted. And in terms of our financials, the FY22 sales tax revenues are stronger than budgeted, owing to Georgia's propensity to spend its way through the pandemic. And our expenses are lower, again, primarily due to the vacancies that I aforementioned. We are drawing down on COVID relief funds as quickly as possible, and the surplus that will yield will result in us helping us fill the hole that we are projecting for FY24 and FY25. We will brief you on the proposed FY23 Marta budget in the next quarter. Next slide, please. I'm actually happy to talk about this Marta Reach pilot program. We launched it yesterday. It's a 6-month pilot study to help us understand how this service can address first and last mile connectivity to the system. We have 3 pilot zones in play, including the west side of Atlanta, anchored by H.E. Holmes Rail Station. The success metrics here will be the level of service adoption, customer feedback and convenience, fiscal sustainability, and overall effect on ridership. I want to thank Commissioners Khadija and Hall for their help in getting the word out to their constituents. Next slide, please. In terms of the capital expansion program, next slide, I want to begin with the FY21 bus shelters and amenities update. And again, I'm pleased to report that our program to install 1,000 new bus shelters and amenities over 5 years is on track. It's important for us, not only in improving the customer's experience on our system, but also in demonstrating our ability to execute on an important program and the public promise inherent in that. Fulton County will receive 50 more amenities, next slide please, in FY22. Yep, 15 more amenities in FY22 for a total of 66 amenities that have been installed so far, mostly shelters. By the end of FY22, Fulton County will have received at least 113 amenities. Up on the screen is an example of one of our shelters. This is at Hammond and Concourse Parkway in the perimeter area, providing service to the nearby retail jobs listed on the side of the slide there. With 37 boardings per day occurring there, this stop provides much needed service on the Route 5 and Route 87. Next slide, please. In terms of the I-285, this is an important regional partnership that has been developed and memorialized. Marta is pleased to play the role of the project manager in this effort, and our next steps will be pulling together a policy working group with representatives from each of the entities. We will also initiate the procurement of consulting services, working with the partners and guided by the IGA. Next slide, please. So with South Fulton Parkway and Roosevelt Highway, some preliminary planning work is being done to advance a potential Roosevelt Highway transit corridor. Our planners recently completed an existing conditions technical memo, which documents information like population, demographics, environmental, and traffic conditions addressing existing safety and mobility needs. This memo will bring the project to the same stage that South Fulton Parkway is at, and the team will be identifying stakeholders and initiating engagement to advance these two projects. Next slide. So here we're talking about the GA 400 bus rapid transit. The planning work has continued in this corridor, and we'll be getting stations to a 30% design in order to be ready as GDOT prepares a new RFP for the Express Lanes project. As there are a number of new mayors and council members and city staff in North Fulton, we will be briefing each city on the status of the project over the next several weeks. Next slide. This is exciting. It's Aerotropolis Cid Partnership. We're building on the Aerotropolis Cid's transit feasibility study. Marta will do some early planning work to identify an alignment for a personal rapid transit pilot. We'll start the feasibility study in FY23 to identify a promising pilot corridor and service model. Of course, we'll include public engagement, engineering, design, planning, and project development, and we'll refer to the AACID's work as being foundational in this effort. And we, of course, will stay abreast of the rapidly changing PRT technology, and therefore building relationships with innovators and vendors in this space. Next slide, please. Finally, I want to talk about the smart restroom conversion. On the slide, you'll find that we have a number under construction, 2 of them already converted, and 4 additional in the coming year. So availability of the restrooms is important for good customer experience, and we're working to convert all of our customer restrooms to smart facilities. These are automated, state-of-the-art facilities, clean, safe, and accessible, easier to clean, and connected to our communication systems. East Point Station is under construction now. College Park will be included in the next wave. North Springs is planned for delivery in 2025, Sandy Springs in 2028, and Medical Center is planned for delivery in 2030. We've actually improved our design to delivery model, which pares that process down to a year from previously a 2-year process, so we're quite pleased with that. And with that, next slide, I want to thank you for your time and attention and stand ready for any comments or questions.
Thank you, Mr. Greenwood. Questions? Commissioner Arrington, followed by Commissioner Ellis.
Certainly want to thank you for this information and your presentation. But I do want to ask about the light rail for Campbellton Road and the additional $200 million to make sure that there's light rail in lieu of BRT there. So what's going on with that?
So what's going on is a public conversation. We have met with the interested representatives, elected officials, and community members. We've explained that there is no discrepancy. There's no missing $200 million. we've also explained that, I like to say, if everybody knew everything, then we'd be aligned on what the best solution is. But the fact is, what we're proposing and the locally preferred alternative has been known and identified as bus rapid transit. But that doesn't mean that the $300 million investment is going to suffer any worse for that. So a number of things are going into that corridor and into the community, such as green improvements to the environment, wet infrastructure improvements, getting rid of the power lines that are overhead, bringing sidewalks and lighting, just making sure that the avenue, the access to the transit corridor is actually safe, sound, and appreciated by the folks that are living there. Once you get on the transit corridor, every element, every objective that light rail was providing is being provided by BRT. And so in terms of reliability, throughput, capacity, all of those things, and in fact, given that it's an electric vehicle, BRT is offering a quieter ride, one that is void of noise pollution, vibration, and any other types of pollution. So there, that's just a bit of the reasoning behind the locally preferred alternative. It is our job to inform folks that are, wondering where that investment went, to inform them that it's very much there, and to inform them that once they're, we'll continue the conversation as we speak. Some of my colleagues are down at City Hall having that conversation, but we stand behind the locally preferred alternative.
And so when you say locally preferred alternative, I guess I'm a little confused because you started out by saying you have spoken to the people in that area.
Yeah.
I represent that area. No one has spoken to me.
There are multiple opportunities to have engagement, and you're more than welcome to reach out to us outside of this process and continue that conversation. But the locally preferred alternative is a term given to the result of a continuous engagement process. So
locally preferred alternative is light rail.
That's okay. We can have that conversation, but that's not the statistics that we have. We'll share them with you.
Awesome.
Commissioner Ellis and Vice Chair Houseman.
Hey, Mr. Greenwood, thanks for the presentation, and we do looking around there. I'm going to throw my voice over there and see if you can look that way. But thanks for the presentation, and certainly welcome, and we appreciate you stepping in and into the leadership role in a very big way. I just had sort of two questions. I appreciate the ridership slide. I'm glad we have that in there. I'm just curious about any additional commentary on specific things or different things that Marta's looking at doing to kind of increase ridership or move ridership up, particularly in, maybe if there are pocketed areas where it's still not really come back. So that's my first question. Maybe you address that, and then I've got one more that's sort of entirely separate.
Thank you. When it comes to ridership, we have been taking a data-driven approach to look at where we are losing ridership and where the return has been more pronounced than others. Oddly enough, we find that the AM and PM peak periods are the ones that are slower to return, suggesting that traditional travel times and work obligations are not what they were pre-COVID. What we're doing about it, though, is a couple of things. One is spreading the message that Marta has never left. So whenever people are comfortable coming back to public transit, we are here. We've never left. We've been very public about our cleaning efforts and our disinfection efforts, moving that function out into the public to improve their confidence in the process. We're also taking the opportunity while ridership is lower to double down on our efforts to make sure that our stations are cleaner, that our vehicles are cleaner, and actually investing in things like our TR4 track renovation program while the ridership was down. So TR4 just ended last week very successfully, actually ahead of time, allowing our trains to travel faster through the designed areas. So it's a lot of our efforts are really grassroots, customer-facing efforts to entice people to come on back. We talk about some other things such as the new rail cars and electric buses that are a nod to the future, but in the meantime, we fully recognize we need to do what we can now to get today's ridership back.
Okay, All right, thanks for that. And my second question, and you may not have the answer to this, or we may want to have a discussion outside of this, but on Georgia 400 Bus Rapid Transit, it noted that GDOT's expected to issue this new RFP in early fall. Is it set in stone, kind of the scope of the RFP, and whether or not it will be the same sort of scope, or are there discussions, or is there an opportunity to have discussion about expanding the scope of the RFP to pick up cost associated with, capital construction related to BRT?
Yeah, I would say we're not in a set it and forget it mode. We are preparing to initiate policy working group and technical working group, similar to the 285 approach. And in those conversations, specific issues can be addressed.
In terms of I realize the sort of getting this RFP out there and all that sort of stuff has been, the state's had some challenges with it. Obviously, they pulled it back. In terms of the timeline to get a decision made around that and including that within the scope, when would that need to be done? Do you have a sense of that?
I would have to get back to you on that.
Okay.
I know we're still investigating exploring our funding options and our commitments. So time frame is the other thing. I can get a good answer back to you.
Okay. All right. Maybe we could have some, further discussions around that. I guess sooner rather than later. That would be great. Thanks.
Thank you.
Good to see you. Thanks for being here. And again, thanks for stepping up into a leadership role unexpectedly. And we appreciate all you're doing. And welcome to Fulton County. I guess we'll be seeing a lot of you in the future. Commissioner Ellis did ask one of my questions. And I do know that, as far as paying to the public for the construction phase, it would be great if we could condense the timeline to include construction simultaneously for both projects. And so, anything that we can do to emphasize that, I think would be a benefit to the community. And also, with the IIJA funding that's out there now, I'm curious what sort of efforts y'all are making to make sure that we're maximizing our requests for assistance through those programs. And if you could get us that information, perhaps we can partner with you on the ask to help move that along. I know our federal lobbying team is here. I hope y'all have connected today, because I think it's really important that we coordinate that as much as possible to maximize, our outcomes.
Thank you, Ms. Hasman. We will be doing exactly that. And that is a goal of ours, to maximize the outcomes, and partnering with the lobby team. And some of our Marta folks have already been meeting with them, including Ms. Hardage this morning. So we'll continue that conversation with that goal in mind. Very
good. Appreciate that. But again, I do think that it's important for us to be informed of what you're actually trying to accomplish with regards to the IIJA funding. And the conversation earlier about BRT, light rail, I mean, you weren't around when we went through the extensive planning process with our expansion plan. We looked at everything. We did site visits throughout the country. Everybody only was familiar with heavy rail. We ruled it out because of the cost. We also chose BRT primarily for that same reason, because it was more affordable and quicker and more flexible, and all of the reasons that I'm sure your data supports. But I do know there is some conversation still ongoing in different pockets of your service area that includes light rail. And so I think it would be helpful for us to see the big picture, what you're planning, where it connects. I mean, I know that it's unlikely for people to want to change modes multiple times to get to their destination. So I think the connectivity piece is important. But, to take one little section alone without understanding what it connects to and all of the other pieces really is not, I think, understandable. So I think it would help all of us, because, what we're talking about with Campbellton Road is in Atlanta. We don't really have any input from a legislative perspective on what happens in Atlanta. We have board representation, and we have overlap with the County Commission and the City of Atlanta, obviously. So we do it is a concern. But anyway, I just think in your next update, perhaps you could provide us with a broader look. You know, I hear Clayton County's getting some lines now under construction, which is great. Just the overall picture would be very helpful.
Understood. We will bring that back in terms of a full sequence plan and the various modes in the various areas. I think sometimes some conversations are happening now with a view on, you know, timelines associated with the federal fiscal year. But more importantly is making sure that all of our service areas understand what the plan is for everyone going forward. So we will do that.
Thank you. I mean, it matters to us that we have a system that takes people where they need to go.
Today and tomorrow.
In the easiest way possible. So,
Yes.
You know, that's our goal. Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Rahman.
Thank you, Vice Chair Houseman. First of all, I want to say I am a supporter of Marta, a staunch supporter, because we cannot be where we need to be or even move to where we need to be without the partnership of Marta. So I want to first say that. I also want to say I appreciate you standing up to the role that you're in. A lot of the previous conversations that were had may not have included you. And so I just want individuals to know that when we're looking at light rail, when we're looking at the BRT and other things, that everyone needs to be at the table. I was so glad to meet with the federal lobbying team on yesterday, and I expressed to them some of the challenges in the community because the information doesn't always trickle down. Do you put the chicken before the egg? Do you bring the development first, then you bring the light rail, or does the light rail encourage the development? I also think that when we're looking at Marta's participation, we need to look at the participation of what our board members here do. You know, Alicia Ivy was a great voice at the Marta board, and she was removed. And so I know a lot of our citizens in Southwest Atlanta and South Fulton County were concerned about that because of this very reason of not having all the voices at the table. I can only tell you with my community interaction what are some of the concerns. But while I'm telling you the concerns, I am also going on record. I support Marta. I think we need to work to make sure that all of the community has a voice at the table. But more importantly, we need to understand when we're talking about transportation, when we're talking about dollars, when we're talking about construction time, some things are quicker, some things are longer, and we have to be in the mindset of what the long vision is. So the only plea, if it is a plea at this point, is to make sure that our community partners, I'm concerned that Commissioner Arrington says nobody talked to him. You know, he is a representative, he represents that area, I represent that area as well. And so I think it's very important that the communication gets filled down. And I know that you all are all trying very hard to do that. And I have a partnership with you all, with my constituency base, to make sure that that information gets out. But I think we need to understand that it is a two-way street. The voices that sit on that Marta board is just as important as the person that's standing here making the presentation. Thank you.
Agreed. Commissioner Hall.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you for this presentation. It is outstanding. Welcome. And I hope that you're being acclimated into this huge environment. If you need anything from me, you're welcome to contact me. I've known two of your closest employees, Colleen Kiernan and Melissa Mullinex, for many, many years before I was even elected, before I was even chief of staff to the late Commissioner Joan Garner, back during a time when I worked for City Hall. And so I know that these are two extraordinary women, and they always keep me updated on what's going on with Marta. I'm so proud to see that you have under construction at the Georgia World Congress Center, H.E. Homes, and on the west side of Atlanta, Bankhead, but also just throughout Fulton County, because I believe in transportation and I believe that it spurs economic development, and that is something that we all want to see in Atlanta and in Fulton County. So thank you for all your hard work, and thank you for stepping up to the plate.
Thank you. All right, other comments or questions? All right, thank you so much. Madam Clerk.
22-0147, Fulton Dekalb Hospital Authority Quarterly Update.
Thank you, Chairman Pitts and Commissioners, for the opportunity to come before you today. My name is Catherine Flowers, and I'm the Chair of the Fulton Dekalb Hospital Authority. And today with me, I have Bernie Tokars, fellow board member, Rick Shackelford, and our CEO, Javon Gibson. Thank you again. We have not been here in a while. We've had a lot of changes. Most of our board members are new. But I came back to report to you today that we have a great working relationship. We are working on our strategic plan, should have that completed shortly, and we will be able to come back with more progress. So right now, I'd like to go ahead and turn it over to Mr. Gibson.
Good morning, Commissioners. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you. My name is Javon Gibson. I am the CEO of the Fulton County Dekalb, Hospital Authority. Please, next slide. As Chair Flowers shared, this has been a year of transition. We have 5 new trustees. I want to introduce you to our Board of Trustees. We have Kathleen Flowers Glasgow, who is our chair, Bernie Tokars, who's the vice chair, Pastor Eric Thomas, who's our secretary, Shannon George Sink, who is our treasurer, a number of new appointees here. Ms. Alicia Ivy is on our board, Mr. Rick Shackelford, who is here with me, Representative Karen Bennett, as well as Mr. Thomas W. Dorsch III. Next slide, please. A part of the transition that you see is our staff is significantly shorter than it has been in the past. Again, we have our Chief Operations Officer, Mr. Joshua Murphy, our Director of Community Engagement, who is Ms. Beverly Burks. Ashley Yates is our Program Associate, and Mr. Montrez Ruffin is the Executive Assistant. Next slide, please. A few things I want to take into consideration, would like for you to take into consideration before going forward. Part of the transition and in the nascent stages of my role here, I was tasked with making sure that we sort of reflected and revisited what is the role of the Fulton Dekalb Hospital Authority? What is that role with respect to the healthcare ecosystem here in Georgia, with respect to Grady? And how does our mission and vision align with that role? Our trustees came together in the nascent stages of our strategic planning process and decided that we needed to revisit the mission. The mission that they came up with, Commissioners, is that through collaboration with Grady and innovative strategies, we will improve health outcomes in Fulton and Dekalb. The vision that we've established is that the FDHA will be a resource for creative solutions that support the delivery of quality and innovative healthcare and preventive services to ensure equity for all residents of Fulton and Dekalb. I think we recognize the past year and past 2 years have demonstrated the role that healthcare plays with respect to overall health and wellness for the residents of Fulton and Dekalb counties. And so we've decided to make that center first and paramount in the work that we do. I want to take a quick moment to give you a recap of what happened in 2021. Of course, I was appointed the new CEO. We had 5 new trustees join the board, which is tantamount to an entire shift in the landscape of our board. 5 staff transitioned within the first 4 to 5 months to new organizations, including our CFO and our Chief Health Policy and Administration Officer. Myself being new in the role, that means a shift of probably 50 to 60% of your C-suite staff, as well as a move in the institutional knowledge associated with the organization. We pressed forward. Our trustees decided to level set the organization and begin the strategic planning process. The process was designed to celebrate the successes and the efforts of the board up until that point, and also to build on those successes and identify opportunities to move forward. Our trustees agreed that the organization's core values must be rooted in transparency, accountability, and professionalism. Next slide, please. So there are a few planning core assumptions that we made. These core assumptions are sort of the core drivers of the work that we're doing as an organization. It's the drivers of the role that the FDHA will play as we move forward in Georgia's healthcare ecosystem. Regarding healthcare, we recognize in our work, and I definitely recognize in my time as the CEO, the role that Grady Hospital plays in the healthcare ecosystem in Fulton and Dekalb and beyond. In my time, I've had an opportunity to actually have to visit the Grady ER and see, in the height of the Omicron pandemic, with one of our trustees, and see the type of work that the staff there had to undergo. It is tantamount, commissioners, to war footing in that ER during that time. It was amazing. The resilience of the doctors and the nurses only gave me additional fortitude to make sure that we supported Grady in their efforts. Regarding healthcare, we said the FDHA and Grady are conjoined partners in the effort to ensure that all residents of Fulton DeKalb have access to quality healthcare. Health and wellness are drivers and indicators of a host of interrelated social and economic outcomes. And because of that, we recognize that it's incumbent upon us to make sure that we have partnerships with a number of agencies and organizations in Fulton that drive healthcare outcomes across social determinants of health. Regarding our work, we believe, as an organization, that form follows function, that the FDA's structure, mission, and focus must be representative of the purpose of the organization. One could argue that in the past there may have been some departure from that purpose. Others may argue that it was a form of innovation. What I believe that it sits somewhere between the intersection of the two. That as an organization, it is incumbent upon us to evolve as the needs of our community evolves. We also believe that it's incumbent upon us to remain true to the mandate that was given us by law. Regarding our organizational culture, this is the space that I think is extremely important. We believe, moving forward, that our organizational culture must be one of transparency, accountability, and professionalism. And these are the minimum standard for the agency. We believe that responsiveness, a responsive organization must be willing to evolve as the needs of the stakeholders and constituents evolve. And lastly, we believe that we must be innovative, that par for the course or status quo is not the direction that we need to go. Lastly, I want to leave you with the key initiatives that we're working on currently. As Chair Flowers-Glasgow shared with you, we are finishing up our strategic planning process. A part of that strategic planning process was community listening sessions. We were very fortunate in Fulton County. We had some 32 organizations on our community listening sessions and stakeholders. And it was incredible feedback. Some of the information we knew, some of the information we didn't know, but we knew that it was extremely important, and our trustees agreed to hear from our community partners. We're going to restructure the staffing model so that it more directly aligns with the function of the organization. We're going to retool, our internal controls and operations so that there's standardization and accountability. We'll complete the strategic planning process and define what our organizational priorities will be for the next 3 years. We will also standardize our grant making, our monitoring and evaluation systems to ensure continuity across long and short-term grants. Externally, we will work closely with Grady to identify opportunities to collaborate around issues related to health equity, wellness, and emerging best practices. We will also work very closely with and to engage our community partners who we have historically worked with extremely well. We also, of course, count this commission as one of our core partners and a driver behind the healthcare work that this organization does. We'll continue to engage our community partners in the evolution of our work through grant making and educational listeners. And lastly, we'll continue to listen intentionally to our community partners and stakeholders to ensure that Grady and the FDHA is responsive to their needs. That's it. Next slide, please. This is my email address. I've had the good fortune of meeting a number of you in passing at various settings. I sincerely hope that those of you I haven't had the opportunity to meet, I will in the near future. The purpose of this initial orientation is just to orient you to where the FDHA is. Please, I'm open to any questions you may have, commissioners.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Ellis, followed by Commissioner Abdul Rahman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for the presentation, Mr. Gibson, and for the board members, for board trustees members for being here with us as well. Since you're going through a strategic planning process, you know, and maybe what I'm about to posit is not necessarily a question, but more just a statement of opinion that I hope is being considered in your strategic planning. You know, we have different authorities, you know, kind of that operate within the county. You know, there are folks that sit on this board that also sit on, you know, other authority, you know, as board members, right? So we sit in the shoes of some of your board of trustees as well in some of those roles. And in many of those are structures where the authority acts as the owner of something, right? And in the constructs of those boards, really our function becomes more of an administrative and a monitoring kind of role in the action of the authority, not an operator, right? You know, so we got a recreation authority, we lease it out to the Hawks, there's a contract, they run it. You know, there's stuff about, you know, facilities and that sort of stuff and all that. We don't get into basketball operations or, you know, trying to become a, you know, recreation provider, if you will, okay? So, you know, you're the owner of Grady, right? There's, you know, and so my statement and maybe my question in terms of your having this, in terms of the strategic planning kind of process, I hope is one of the questions on the table, are we in administrative and monitoring and sticking true to what, you know, kind of is required of us? Or are you evaluating whether or not there's sort of been mission creep over into other areas that really may not necessarily, while they may be worthwhile issues, they're maybe not necessarily really the function and purview for which the authority was established. So that's really my, you know, question and commentary, and maybe that's something that y'all are still going through and wrestling with. And if that's the case, you know, kind of when you come back or, you know, off cycle, you know, I want to hear some discussion around that. So,
well, Commissioner Ellis, to your point, I think that a part of the reason why our trustees decided early on to really reflect on the legal and monitoring oversight responsibilities of the hospital authority was to ensure that we didn't do just that, to ensure that the work that we were doing was directly aligned with our legal and regulatory obligations. I think Grady, and John is here now, can attest to the fact that our approach from my time in this role has been to work collaboratively with Grady with the understanding that Grady, GMHC, has oversight of the day-to-day functions of the organization, and that we, as the FDHA, have a responsibility to ensure that Grady is properly resourced, honoring their obligations, but as a partner in that effort, and not necessarily cross-pollinating work and with clear delineation in our roles. So to your point, Commissioner Ellis, I think that particular piece has been cleared up early on in the strategic planning process. I think it was sort of one of our core assumptions, and it was the reason why we revisited our legal monitoring and oversight responsibilities.
yeah, and you know, kind of embedded within that too, you know, kind of the, you know, there's the notion, you know, that, you know, the authority's been doing, you know, you've been doing some grants, right? And there's nothing wrong with that in terms of where it's been focused at, right? But there's a wrestle point and a question that, you know, hopefully that has sort of been discussed as a board, or maybe that will be discussed as a board, that is that the most appropriate use of that funding, or should that funding be plowed back into the system somehow directly, right? You know, where, you know, it might be more impactful and really more, you know, in line with, you know, kind of the mission and orientation of what the hospital authority is about. You know, so, because it's, grant making in of itself sounds great, but we know it because we're very, I mean, look, we're at 1 point, what's our overall budget? $1.5 billion or something like that. It's hard oftentimes for us to administer grant programs. And, you know, the cost of those and the effectiveness of them and that sort of stuff, you know, it requires a lot of manpower and resources, right? So, you know, the smaller you are as an authority, does that necessarily make sense to continue to do? Is it cost effective? You know, can it really be impactful? Can you really have the monitoring and oversight and impact around it? Or does it become like, oh, we got a bunch of stuff here, we got to make decisions on it, and, maybe we plow money back into this or that, and maybe it has some impact, maybe it doesn't. So that's the kind of thing as you come back the next time, I would be, kind of interesting. If y'all got comments on it right now, I'm interested in them. Or as, kind of the result of your strategic process, I'd be interested in hearing as well.
Yeah, I think that was sort of the impetus for us revisiting what direction we were going in. One thing we knew is that we needed to develop a better relationship with Grady. We needed to be better partners with them and to work more closely with them. And so one of the things that we are going to do is revisit the grant. We didn't have the proper measurements in place. So I think most of the board members now, we all agree to just to throw money out without any measurements and any direction that's targeted was not the best use of those dollars. And so we have thought about it. We are going to be meeting with Grady because we want to align with what they want to do, with the understanding that healthcare is changing. The direction is changing, and how can we have an impact with the resources that we have? So we have not finalized that, but our job is not to overstep and overreach with Grady.
Commissioner Ellis, I also want to offer, and you're well aware that the hospital authorities are unique in their structure. The FDHA is unique in that we touch multiple parts of the healthcare ecosystem. It creates a challenge, but it also creates an opportunity. Mm-hmm. And I think that the work that we do in community, when properly challenged, when channeled and properly focused, can also support and add value to the work that's happening at Grady. And so the thought and the hope is through this process, as Chair Flowers says, as this process evolves, we can find ways to make sure that the impact is measured, can be quantified and qualified, and it shows the value proposition of the resources that are being invested.
Okay. All right. Thank you both.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Abdul Rahman.
Thank you, Chairman. I want to, in a couple of things I want to say, but first and foremost, in Women's History Month, I want to thank Catherine Flowers for her leadership. I know at the beginning it was a little rocky with my relationship with the board, and of course your backup, the Vice Chair, Bernie, but I'm glad we worked through it. I appreciate what I consider to be strides for better communication, but I would be remiss if I didn't say that I appreciate your leadership, Catherine. You weathered some storms, and so I wanted to openly say that I do appreciate that. I also wanted to say to the CEO, I appreciate you reaching out to me. Your continued support of the community and reaching out to me for what I would consider the pulse of the community in a lot of ways. I know the concern about the Grady building across from the Hamilton E-Home station is an issue. But I also know that you all are taking that very seriously. And I wanted to openly let the constituents know today that you all are taking that seriously. You all are doing everything in your power to make sure you balance the decisions that you all are making. And so even though I will be the first one to say at the beginning it was a little rocky, I appreciate what you all have done in this very short amount of time in repairing, restoring, but making sure that the community knows that you all are not undertaking actions and leaving them out. And so I just wanted to make sure that I openly say I appreciate what you all are doing and I support the vision that you all have. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Commissioner Houseman. Vice Chair Houseman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good to see all of y'all down here today. I'm really pleased to hear that you're moving in a great direction with your strategic plan and the purpose of your organization. We've had a lot of conversations over the years about exactly what are you doing, what should you be doing, and how that's helping Grady, which obviously is all of our goal here is to work closely with Grady and make sure that they have what they need to serve our community. I'm glad to see so many folks from Grady here today. That's a good sign as well of that collaboration. And I know that you spoke of the emergency room issues, and We all are really appreciative of the good work going on at Grady every day, whether there's a pandemic or not. If you're in trouble, you do want to end up at Grady Hospital, and I want to say that for the record, that there's excellent work going on at Grady, and we appreciate it. And you know, we've had some conversations in the last month or so about some of the challenges that are happening at Grady. And Mr. Chairman, I don't know if we're going to take the opportunity to discuss that, since we do have representatives from the hospital here, especially in the area of nursing shortages.
Yes, as soon as they finish their presentation, I want to recognize Mr. Humphrey and ask him to
Very good. I think we need to take advantage of that opportunity to have that additional conversation. So thanks again for being here.
Thank you. Commissioner Hall.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to thank the entire Board of Trustees. There are many great people on this board now, and from Thomas George III, otherwise known as Trey, and Alicia Ivy, and my appointee, Pastor Eric Thomas, and so many others. Bernie, you know, I've known you for some years now. And Catherine, I still have your thank you note that you sent to me, written by hand, and that was very nice of you. But Mr. Gibson, it was a pleasure to meet you some months ago at a women's breakfast in honor of Zenona Clayton. We had an outstanding conversation at our table, as God would have it. You sat right next to me, and it was an outstanding conversation. So I didn't expect anything less than what we're seeing today. I knew that you were going to be a great addition to the staff, and you have a great group of staff. So I'm looking forward to the continued work between yourself and your staff and the Board of Trustees. So thank you very much.
Thank you. It's an honor. Mm-hmm. All right, any other comments? Just one. Ms. Flowers. Ms. Alicia Ivy and I have spent quite a bit of time talking about the need for a forensic audit. Mm-hmm. Have y'all taken that up yet?
We will be bringing that to the board in our meeting this month.
Okay, thank you.
And one of the things that I know that I share with Ms. Ivy is that this board has been transparent in everything that it is doing. And that means that every single board member will know what is going on and will have a voice in that decision. So thank you, and thank you again for the opportunity to present today.
Thank y'all for being here, and as was mentioned earlier, Mr. John Humphrey is here from CEO of Grady. Come on down, please, sir. It's great that you are here, and we need to take advantage of your presence, because I was going to bring up later on in our meeting, we may as well do it now, the situation at Grady in particular regarding the nursing shortage. Sure. But you might want to address the relationship between Grady and the authority, and then transition to the nursing shortage.
Thank you, Chairman. Chairman Pitts and members of the Board of Commissioners, it really is an honor to be here today in the flesh, not through little boxes. Grady and our leadership team have such an established relationship with all of you, and we managed to actually do an orientation for Commissioner Abdul Rahman via WebEx, and had a great interchange there, and look forward to hosting you at Grady to further that orientation. Quick comment about what you just heard from the FDHA. I have been serving as the president and CEO of Grady and Grady Memorial Hospital Corporation for a little over 10 years. Hard to believe, and by far, this board of trustees and Javon is an absolute godsend. All of the questions you have asked today of them were right on the money, and that board and Javon are definitely steering that organization in the direction that you all have set forth. It is by far the best working relationship I've had with the FDHA since being here, and I appreciate Javon and Catherine's leadership in that, and the full board. Joining me today, of course, you know Tim Jefferson, our General Counsel, Matt Hicks, our Chief Policy Officer, and Anthony Saul. You may not know, but Anthony became Grady's Chief Financial Officer in October. He was working internally, had come to us from Ochsner in Louisiana, and was working as our Senior VP of Finance, and when the CFO position came open, there was no doubt who needed to fill that role, and so Anthony has been in that role. Just want to share with you a few comments. I think we do have a presentation. Do we, Dick? May or may not be in there.
Yeah, I'm not sure the clerk has that since we received it last
Okay.
night. So I would just
No
speak
problem
to
at all. So needless to say, the last 2+ years have been, for me, in healthcare administration, the most challenging of my career, and clearly the most challenging for people who work in the healthcare field. December of 2019, Grady was faced with a massive internal disaster, a flood that knocked out 220 of our adult inpatient beds. Right on the heels of that was the beginning of the pandemic. The other area hospitals stepped up during that period of time to help take part of that volume that we could no longer accommodate. But in record time, Grady was able to get those beds back online and to restore all the services that had been lost. Healthcare workers have left the healthcare field in significant numbers since the beginning of this pandemic. It's estimated that nationwide, 20% of healthcare workers have left the hospital environment because of the workload, the stress, and the fear. In particular, nurses have left that environment to seek environments that are less stressful, such as in physicians' offices or ambulatory surgery centers. As a result of that, Grady is facing a short-term and long-term issue. Now, the short-term issue is the high cost of recruiting and retaining enough nurses and staff, which is leading to the first time in 10 years, a budget shortfall for us. Our board years ago established a net income target for the organization of 3%. That's what is required to fund the capital needs and the repair cost for the institution. During the pandemic, that has been revised down to 1.5%. And so coming into 2022, we had budgeted 1.5% margin, but the significant increase in cost for nursing labor is now putting us in a position where we will be in a loss position of 5% to 6% negative margin in 2022. The state of Georgia, throughout the pandemic, has helped in numerous ways. Part of the nursing labor issue we're experiencing is the result of many states in the country stepping up to supplement nurse staffing in hospitals within their state. Truly not knowing what the ramification that would be, they were of pure intent in trying to help the situation. But in doing so, they hired nursing agencies to bring nursing labor into their states to help fill the gap. But those rates climbed continuously throughout the pandemic. And so we have found ourselves with nursing agencies now charging $200 to $220 per hour for an agency nurse, of which approximately $100 an hour goes to the nurse. The state, for a long period of time, supplied and covered that cost to the tune of $54 million. They, at the end of November, discontinued that support. And at that time, there were approximately 101 nurses at Grady being funded by the state that then had to convert to Grady's cost from the state. And so that has been a big hit. The state stepped back in at the beginning of the Omicron surge, but in a limited way, and those resources will be discontinued in April. So the short-term issue is we have this funding gap, and we've been in discussions with Dick Anderson and with Chairman Pitts, as well as the leader at Dekalb County, about how we collaboratively can approach bridging that gap. On a longer-term basis, we are taking very proactive steps in partnering with Georgia State University School of Nursing. We are partnering with Georgia State and a local foundation who is going to put up over $20 million to work with both of us to significantly increase the number of nursing graduates coming out of the Georgia State Nursing Program, and Grady will be the primary training site for those nurses for their in-hospital training, and that is to come. So, just a few points to make. Federal funding through the CARES Act expired in June of this past year. The funding that came to us through the CARES Act was approximately $154 million for that time period. But there has been no additional federal funding flowing to hospitals in the U.S. since then, so none of the excess cost or lost revenue during the Delta surge or Omicron surge have been covered through federal funds. So we're left with a high and growing rate of pay for nurses. The market for nursing wages is far from settled. In my conversations with Dick, I've shared with him, actually, we've spent a lot of time together over the last 2+ years in addressing the COVID pandemic. But the crystal ball goes very dark about where this is going to settle down, where these labor rates are going to settle. The national labor market shortage of nurses continues to increase. Just a few key points. The week of February 14th, 46% of Georgia hospitals reported critical staffing shortages of nurses. As of January 24th, there were 35,000 open travel RN job postings in Georgia. And at that same time, there were 83,000 job postings for nurses in Georgia. 83,000 vacant nursing positions in Georgia. Georgia has the 5th lowest per capita supply of nurses in the country and ranks 44th in the number of nurses within the state with active licenses. So Georgia is not in great shape going into this. Over this period of time of the pandemic, the average cost for a nurse has gone from $89,000, all-in cost, employment cost, benefits and all, up to now $143,000 on average. Grady employs fewer FTEs overall at this point than we did last year, but in our budget reflected a $60 million increase in labor costs because of this issue. So let me just briefly share with you what we have done internally to address these runaway nursing agency costs. I shared with you a minute ago that a nursing agency will charge us $200, $220 an hour for a traveler agency nurse, but only about $100 of that actually gets to the nurse. In the Omicron surge, because it was the highest volume surge we have experienced to date, at the peak, Grady had 280 COVID patients in the hospital. Of the prior 4 surges, the highest number was 140. So 280 ended up occupying almost 45% of all of our inpatient beds. So it became truly overwhelming. That happened nationwide, and nurses began to travel in even greater numbers. So in January, we made the decision that we would rather pay Grady nurses the agency rate or the dollars they would get from the agency rather than paying the agency $120 more than that for that person. And so that position has been adopted by many different hospitals nationwide. But where we may have had nurses starting rates in certain areas at $35 an hour, that's now $80 an hour. In critical care areas where that may have been $60 an hour, that's now $100 to $120 an hour. The agreement we've come to is that we are writing 12-week contracts with our nurses to be paid at that rate, but at that rate, they have to volunteer to work 1 extra shift and 1 weekend per month. Once we launched that program, there was a huge uptake by our nurses in that program. And so we have had right at 50% or a little over 50% of the bedside nurses take us up on that offer. Here again, it's in 12-week segments. We are in the middle of the first 12 weeks. We've already committed to another 12. As I've shared with the chairman and with Dick, the lack of predictability to where this job market is going to settle, now that Omicron has become less of an issue, is still to be determined. There is significant cost during this first quarter to Grady of both staffing the agency that remains and is contracted with us through the end of March and ramping up our own program. The projected loss due to that one issue is a little over $22 million. And so we have gone to the leadership of both counties to discuss how the counties can support us in helping offset that loss in the first quarter, understanding that both counties are already locked into their budgets and moving forward with what was planned. But this is a dire situation. This is the first time I've ever come to the counties, other than the generous capital funds you provided for the Corral Pavilion. This is the first time I've come to you asking for operational support above and beyond what you normally provide. And so I shared with Sharon, we base that split between actually we're in agreement about how we split that amount between the two counties, and that's based on the charity care provided to each county. And so Fulton County is about 56% of that, Dekalb County around 44% of that. This is really for information today, understanding that we still need to work through the leadership in both counties to determine, is there a way to help offset this cost? It is an urgent issue. Grady maintains at any given time 60 to 70 days cash on hand, which is significantly lower than what you would see at other hospitals, but is indicative of a public safety net type of hospital. Per policy, we can't go below 60 days because of our arrangements with our banks, and per board policy, we cannot go below 60 days. And so there's very little cash available to address this issue. So with that, without rambling on and on, I'll open it up to any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Humphrey. Excuse me. Commissioner Ellis, Commissioner Hall, Commissioner Ellis, Commissioner Abdul Rahman. You done? All right. Commissioner Ellis, then Commissioner Abdul Rahman.
Yeah, I'll just a few things, and maybe this is probably more falls in the category of things that you can kind of follow back up with me, get me information on. But sort of one comment, I mean, it kind of, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but kind of a little bit of what I heard that, while, we've known there's going to be a nursing shortage for, you can go back, 5-10 years, that was sort of predicted, right? So we've been kind of heading in that direction, and certainly different aspects of COVID have helped accelerate that. People wanted to leave the profession early, didn't want to, deal with a mandate, whatever kind of stuff, shift out of the work they were doing. But I also seem to hear you say a little bit that, kind of the countrywide, the state's push to drop in, via federal funding, a lot of money into this has basically artificially led to a lot of wage inflation.
I would agree with that. I think the advent of this large demand for travelers came through that. I think you would have seen if the states hadn't gone there, you would have seen health systems take some type of action.
Right.
I can't predict whether that would have been as expensive. My speculation is it would not have.
Right.
But here again, the states felt that they were doing a great thing. And at the time, we all thought that too. But then as we began to see where that was headed with driving wage inflation, it became a big concern.
So there may be some level of artificial stuff. I mean, wages are probably definitely going up, and will kind of remain that level. But there's probably some level of artificial inflation within that, given kind of what transpired. Just a bunch of money got thrown at it, and it was like, okay, let's all go chase it. Okay, so that's part of it. One thing that it would be helpful for me to see would be, kind of the sort of the overall, whether it came through the states or whether it came directly from the feds, sort of the totality of money, the funding that came into the system, sort of in, how that was used and all that sort of stuff. So, something along those lines. I realized 154 with CARES, but there was also, other money that came through the state, like you're referencing, and sort of, we could get a better picture of that and a better understanding of that sort of schematically.
It's pretty much just
that'd be
those
helpful.
two numbers, the 154 million in CARES Act from the feds to offset increased expenses or lost revenue, and then the 54 million in labor support from the state.
Over what that time, and then how you used it, and that sort of stuff, and what the requirements were on. I guess if the state stopped doing it, I'm kind of curious, why did they stop doing it? I mean, what was sort of you said they stepped back in for a little bit during the Omicron piece. They now dialed it back, but sort of what's the rationale that the states put forward with that?
What we were told was that they had realized how that mechanism was driving up wages, and didn't want to be a part of that problem.
Okay. But they stepped back in during, they gave that position, but then they stepped back in during when you had the uptick.
So I believe, and Matt can correct me, but that first round of funding came through CARES Act funding, and then they were using some of their ARP funding for the second wave, but it was a much smaller amount for a much more limited time. Whereas before there had been over 100 positions funded. During this period from probably mid-January into April, it's 50. But that will again go away at the end of April.
Just, I guess municipalities and so forth and counties were eligible to make application to the state for funding for ARPA money. Were hospital systems in that same position as well?
Very much so, and we did.
Okay.
As you know, the governor has announced 2 huge tranches of funding around broadband and then around water improvement in the state. So those 2 huge buckets out of the ARP funds have gone forward. There's a third bucket that's also related to infrastructure that hospitals were able to participate in, and that has not yet worked its way through the mechanism, nor an announcement been made. We're in continuous discussions with the state, with the governor's office, and they're looking at various options, but none of those options would come close to rectifying this cost.
But what's the amount of funding that Grady applied for?
Well, actually, Grady's board made a determination that we've known and you've known for a long time that Grady needs additional inpatient beds to meet the demand. And so we came up with a facility plan that would allow us to use some of the existing facility to do that expansion. And we applied to the state for those expansion dollars. So it was capital dollars, not operating funds, for that expansion. And it was around $159 million.
Okay. All right, on your financial situation, I thought, and maybe I've got the number wrong in my head, that, I thought the surplus, and I realize it's not exactly the right terminology, of reserves, I thought I last saw it was around 250 million, and maybe the way it was recorded in the financials, is that?
Yeah, days cash on hand. Okay. So the days cash on hand is now 258.
So 258 million cash on hand.
Yeah, but floating above 60 days, and we can't go under 60 days.
And that's a state statute, or is that just your general bylaws, or that sort of?
That's board imposed as well as our banking partners.
Okay. Longer term, this sort of issue of cost, while you are in a slightly different, different situation than other hospital systems, everybody's got this, and their revenue streams are different. So what I'm getting at with this question is, when does this conversation move towards, or maybe is it already, towards what conversations you're having with health insurers? I mean, because, I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, that's how it's going to have to be collaboratively funded, you know, across the country if this thing is permanent,
Yeah.
right? So,
Yeah, so those discussions, even on a national level, are being had. And so when you look at the commercial insurers, there hasn't been much receptivity to that. There has been discussion at the federal level with the Medicare program. Within that program, those dollars that flow have a labor component to it. And there is active discussion with the Department of Health and Human Services in Washington about adjusting that labor factor upward to accommodate that. The discussion with commercial insurers won't be effective health system by health system. It has to be handled in a larger format, such as the Georgia Hospital Association or even the American Hospital Association. I'm on the board of the American Hospitalization, and we are already formulating what those discussions need to look like, sound like.
And I don't know if there have been times where, on the federal reimbursement stuff, I mean, is it like revisited once a year, or are there components that get, you know, periodically adjusted with this sort of real time and then move back down?
It's not ever been consistent in what that time period is, but that labor component is it's market. It's for an entire market.
Right.
So it would be Atlanta, you know, or Fulton County. It is regularly reviewed and adjusted based on the actual cost of labor.
Okay. So I guess we have federal lobbyists in here. Is that a conversation that we should be having with our federal lobbyists?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Okay. All right. I'll stop. That's helpful. You know, so I appreciate that background, and I may follow up with you with some other stuff. So I'll keep talking. Thanks.
Be glad to.
Thank you, Commissioner Ellis. Commissioner Abdul Rahman.
Thank you, Chairman. I know whenever we have conversations about money, it gets a little sticky, but what I wanted to do, and I wanted maybe you or your staff to speak to, as I got a text message here. The nursing shortage, when it comes to money being paid for the nurses, is very competitive. But what I would like for you to do for my constituency base, especially, you know, when we met, I told you I had a lot of members in my family that were nurses and have retired from Grady. What is Grady offering in support? You hear the nurses saying they feel burnt out, underappreciated. And so I just want, in this conversation especially, for you to speak to what Grady is doing to make sure that the nurses are cared for emotionally. Because a lot of times when it comes down to dollars, yeah, they may have a choice, but some like to be where they have additional support, especially in this environment. So if you could just hit on that for me, I'd really appreciate it.
No, and I'm glad you asked that question, because that whole area has been fundamental toward maintaining the mental and emotional health of the workforce, including and nurses. And so we have taken a multi-pronged approach to making sure we can support our staff as they have worked through the obstacles that appeared in their lives during the pandemic. I'll just speak to a few of them. But from the beginning of the pandemic, I had put in place probably 7 years ago a thing called an employee hardship fund. And it's employees donating to a fund to help other employees. To be honest, a lot of employees participate, but the senior executive team are the major funders of that plan. In a given year, we may get 50 requests and maybe, you know, a fund in emergency situations, $150,000. In the first year of the pandemic, we met 1,200 requests to the tune of $1.5 million in hardship funding for our staff. Also on the dollars cents side of that, because we had so many employees whose spouses either lost jobs, and then you've got kids who are being schooled at home, and you can't provide healthcare services from home. You got to be on site to do it. And so there were some massive complications in people's personal lives on numerous fronts. We partnered with a local foundation, private foundation, and they provided the funds for us to provide what I called combat pay bonuses, but really retention bonuses for all Grady staff. And then, in addition, a separate pot for nurses. And so that all came out of the private sector, that funding. We didn't have the funding to do that, but they were very much interested in that. Then on the mental and emotional side, we have developed 3 different resiliency and mental health programs for our staff, and we go to where they are and to their work group, and or we make, because we're a teaching hospital, we have a psychology program, and the psychologists are making themselves available for one-on-one discussions and or small group discussions. And then we also have a pastoral care program that we have focused heavily on the needs of employees. So we've approached it from many different routes, including establishing a special nutrition program for employees too.
Well, the reason I wanted you to speak to that, I knew everything that you just told me, but I wanted the listening audience to know, because I actually know constituents who left because of the money and came back because they felt the trade-off for what their emotional was and what the other circumstances around just was not worth it. So I appreciate you letting the audience know that it's truly a partnership. I consider Grady family, so thank you for that.
Thank you so much.
Vice Chair Houseman.
So thanks again for that detailed explanation of the situation. You know, I hope you understand we're sympathetic, but we have our constraints as well on what we can do. And I'm not sure if we heard a clear number, you know, and maybe you don't know it yet, of what you actually think you need. And obviously projecting long-term is difficult because we don't know what the future holds. But if, you know, we're going to be partners in this, I think it's reasonable to not over expect what we could possibly do to help with the situation. So I think we're looking for some definite ask.
Yeah, so we in discussions with the chairman and with Dick Anderson, the total size of the first quarter problem is $22.3 million. Based on how those funds get split between the 2 counties, that would be $12.5 million from Fulton County. So,
well, you indicated you were still going to get state assistance through April 1st. So
that's already calculated in to what the net number is. And we provided Dick with the more in-depth numbers.
Well, that's a decision for this entire body to make, as you know. So, you know, I guess we need to see something in writing, and we need to analyze it and see what we can do to help. And then we also need to, of course, get, you know, our federal partners involved to see what you know, other resources there might be, and continue the conversations with the state. I mean, I don't think we can solve it today, obviously. Right. But it is concerning that, you know, these numbers are really, really escalating. I know you used the term false inflation or whatever that was, but I mean, what's the doctor's cost? You know, if the nurses are making $150,000, $200,000 a year, what's the cost of the doctors and all the other support staff? Is that also factored in here?
No. So the physician cost is, we're contracted with the Emory School of Medicine and Morehouse School of Medicine, and we pay that employment cost through a contract with them. But you hit the nail on the head in that there's lots of interesting conversations, particularly in academic medicine, where physicians usually make less than their peers working in the community because so much of their time is spent in research and teaching instead of generating, you know, clinical practice dollars. But we have internal medicine physicians, for example, who are making $135,000 an hour, and we have nurses now making near $250,000 an hour. Now, per year. Oh, did I say hour? Boy, wouldn't that be a deal?
Yeah, we wouldn't have a shortage of nurses much
that
longer.
That would have been a problem. but the physicians have a very defined number of hours worked, and they didn't leave. They didn't go to traveling positions. The physician workforce stayed intact, and where there were needs to increase physician staffing through the medical schools, that happened as well. So that, at least from an academic environment, and there's only two of us really in Fulton and Dekalb, and that's Emory and Grady. So that looks very different as far as that's concerned. And so that has not been, there has not been an issue with those rates. However, there are a lot of physicians sitting there going, wow, I'm making $150,000 a year, maybe I need to go be a nurse. Here again, we really do feel, and let's all cross fingers twice, that we won't see a surge like we just experienced, which was the worst of the pandemic. And if COVID becomes like the flu virus and is just part of us in our world at a manageable level, then that premium demand will diminish significantly. What we can't predict is that if that scenario plays out, where will these base nursing rates land? We know they're not going to go back to $35 to $55 an hour. We also know they're not going to be $100 an hour. But that is yet the big unknown.
Well, that leads me to my final question, because I know y'all have got other things to do. Where are we right now with the availability of the therapeutics that are now authorized for treatment? You say we're going to have to learn to live with this. I think we're all in that mindset, but how are we going to be able to access those treatments?
Sure. So as you know, when the new monoclonal therapies were announced that worked on Omicron, because the ones we had didn't, those were slow to get into the market. We are now receiving some of that, as well as the oral medication, much like Tamiflu exists for the flu. The oral medication, we have some of that. Those numbers will increase significantly, and it will become more broadly available. But we have been able to provide both of those to our patients over the last several months. Just not in the numbers we had before, but we're fairly assured that that will increase.
All right, well, again, we're sympathetic, but we have, definite constraints with what we are able to do. So whatever you actually make the ask of, just bear that in mind, please.
Absolutely.
All right, thank you.
Today, I really wanted just to make everyone aware and answer questions.
Thank you.
Commissioner Hall, followed by Commissioner Morris.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. John, that was an awesome presentation, even though I don't have it physically in front of me. You always had a vision. I remember when you first arrived in Atlanta, you had just moved, selected your home, and you told Commissioner Garner and I that you were just starting to move into your home, but you had a vision then, and you just, upon your arrival, you embraced the Grady patients and the Grady staff and the community, and this is just, outstanding work. I want to commend you for that, and I want to speak to the hard work. All right, the hard work. People always tell my team and I that we work so hard, and we tell them, no, it's hard work. Right. It exudes from our heart, and we want to serve, we want to support the people. But I have to tell you that, as a leader, you have staff that also do hard work, and I want to acknowledge and commend two of your staff, because there was a Facebook post posted by a very well-known constituent named Daphne Jordan and her husband, Walter Jordan, about their son. Unfortunately, he suffered some horrific injuries from a car accident. And if you saw the car, you would think that he was not alive, but he survived by the grace of God. And he is in Grady Hospital. And she's actually been texting me this whole time when she saw that Grady was here, and she has given me permission to read you the text message that she sent me just last night, because my team member, Demetrius Mayat, saw the post and tagged me on it and said, Commissioner Hall, we have to do something about this to assist. And so I immediately text my friend, Matt Hicks, who has always been that person, that kind, caring, and considerate person who he just responds immediately. So Ms. Jordan wanted me to read the text that she sent me last night. It says, Austin just had a visit from the Senior Vice President, Chief Experience Officer, which she sent me a picture of the card, and that person is Lindsay Caulfield, Senior VP, Chief Experience Officer, and she said the Senior Vice President, Chief Policy Officer, which is Matt Hicks, who is present with you today. And I know that your Chief Experience Officer would not have been there if it wasn't for Matt, because he is the person that I actually text immediately when I saw that post. But she goes on to say, they are trying to get him into rehabilitation center. We now have a team that's working on a family plan that will involve us. Thank you for your help. And she has the smiley face with the heart eyes. So she was very, very happy at the response. And I want to commend and acknowledge your team, because that is the kind of service that we need to show our constituents, our residents, and you and your patients. So please continue to work on that, because what she experienced, she felt was the discharge procedures just need a little bit of tweaking. And I know from Matt's response that that's gonna happen. I have no, I mean, I believe and know that it will happen. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Commissioner Morris, and then back to Commissioner Ellis.
Couple of things. It's good to see you all, even with this bad news. You know, it's interesting to me. I have friends who are actually traveling nurses. They're traveling all around the country and doing very, very well financially. And I don't begrudge them that at all. It's a tough job, and we saw the shortage coming, as somebody said earlier. It's a little analogous to me with the police situation, where, you know, everybody's trying to outbid each other for police officers, and we're offering higher salaries and signing bonuses, and everybody else is, and it's just spiraling upward. And here it's like on steroids here with the nurses, and we don't know where it's going to end, as you've suggested. I have a hard time imagining that the money is going to attract so many more people to the field that's going to drive down the costs, but maybe there's a little bit of that, I don't know. And I guess following up on Commissioner Hausman's, Vice Chair Hausman's comment, you mentioned what you understood the state's reason for dropping out of this. It is sort of like fueling the fire. You know, the more money we pour into it, the more money other people are going to pour into it. And does the same thing apply in effect to the county's money that you're suggesting here, that we may be fueling that fire a little bit on a much smaller scale, obviously. But that occurred to me here as you made the comment about the state, and you don't really need to respond to it, but because I have a feeling we're going to do whatever we can do to help. Just a couple of questions, really. One is, have you looked, has there been any effort to draw retired nurses out of retirement?
Absolutely, yeah.
Has that been successful at all?
In some cases, yeah, there have been a few that have come back into the workforce, or more than a few. Several that were like, yeah, I'm needed and I'm up for that for a limited period of time. And so that has, it's not been hundreds of nurses, but it has been effective.
Yeah, and I'm sure knowing so many nurses, some of them sing in the choir with me at church, that some of them would do it because of that feeling that they're needed, and not the $100-something an hour. But that would be attractive, I would think, to some folks as well.
It is.
Well, that's good that some of that's happening. And I guess the last question is, I understood you to say this $22.3 million would deal with the first quarter through March 31st. Does that mean there's going to be a second quarter ask and a third quarter ask and a fourth quarter ask and a 2023 ask? Do you have some idea about that?
So what we're dealing with in the first quarter is the ramping up of our pay program and the overlap that has with the traveling agency nurses. Anthony has projected that going forward per quarter, what is now a $20 million problem in this quarter will be about a $7.5 million problem.
Because of doing the pay directly to the nurse instead of the agency?
Instead of the agencies, right.
Okay.
And so that significantly reduces that extra $100 an hour premium cost. But still projecting a quarterly issue of about $7.5 million versus $20 million.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Ellis?
Yeah, just two quick things. I mean, just number one, I did want to go back on the whole kind of like on the reserve thing. If you could give me that data, and I'd be interested in sort of seeing your math on how you're using that, how you calculate the 2-month and all that sort of stuff. Because as you're doing that stagger, kind of what I'm curious about, what my underlying question, what I'm curious about is, you know, how can you apply some portion of your reserves to deal with this, and are you? So that's kind of one of the, but the last question I really got to jump back in the queue on was, are you all eligible to apply for FEMA reimbursement? And if so, have you and or do you plan to?
Yes and yes.
Okay.
In a much more limited fashion. You know, you all had a humongous expense with the vaccine center at the Mercedes-Benz. And I'm going to ask Anthony to comment about where we are with FEMA and what that funding is to reimburse.
Sure. We are in the process. We have applied to FEMA for approximately $15 million of reimbursable expense. And so we're working through that process now. But the contingent of expense that wasn't covered by CARES Act is left to that final $15 million. Barring the things that FEMA will cover that CARES Act would not. So,
so what were those kind of items?
It's other supply items that we were able to.
Right. So I guess is that you've already expended that money, so you're getting reimbursed. So whatever you get back would inure back into your, reserves, if you will.
That's correct.
Okay.
And continue paying for supplies.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
All right. Further questions? All right, Mr. Hopper, thank you so much. And
thank you, Chairman.
Glad that you were here today to so the board can hear firsthand what the situation is. Thank you.
Absolutely. I appreciate your time. Thanks.
And I am following up on Mr. Humphrey. I'm following up on my directions from the group with CEO Thurman and the mayor of Atlanta. Should have that conversation. I'm just waiting for a time from the mayor.
Okay. Thank you. Appreciate that.
All right, colleagues, it's almost 1 o'clock. Can we get through the COVID presentation and then recess for lunch? Any objections to that? All right, Mr. Manager?
Yes, sir. Good afternoon. I think this will be short because the news is good. All the trends continue to show significant improvement, with the one outlier being the daily death rate at 6.9, which is up 20%. That is the equivalent of 159 deaths in February, so still certainly highly impactful. But the daily cases are now below 100. The positivity rate is at 3.5%. Hospitalizations at 250, and this new CDC guidance that's been released puts us in a low-risk category. There's still ample concern, though, however, with the death rate, and 96% of the time that is occurring among the unvaccinated. So with only 59% fully vaccinated in Fulton County, our focus should remain with incentives, communication, and site availability, and we can talk about our plans as it relates to that. As well, we've taken delivery now of 160,000 of the home test kits, so virtually all the ones that we have ordered, and have begun distribution through clinics and libraries and now senior centers, so as well as to our employees. So we're making full use of that. The big news today is the additional approval, or the approval of an additional $25 million in rental assistance. me say that again, since they got no polite applause, an additional $25 million in rental assistance. That'll bring us to almost $100 million, 90-something million in rental assistance that will be available to our residents. So I want to give Dr. Rochelle, again, huge amount of credit, as well as DCA Commissioner Nunn for being helpful with that. As it relates to reopening, we are at a low in terms of 6 new cases in the most recent report, and 87% vaccination rate for our employees. So with the new CDC guidance that I mentioned earlier, we're going to recommend a new posture in terms of mask and vaccination requirements. We recommend that masks be encouraged in our facilities as opposed to require. The exceptions will be in the Board of Health offices, the courts, the jail, and tax commissioner offices where we have a significant amount of contact with the public. In all of those, with the exception of the tax offices, we would expect the public to still wear a mask. In the tax office, it would be optional for the public, required for the employees. New signage is already pre-deployed, and security protocol can be changed as early as this week. So I know there were some concerns when we've changed back and forth previously, given a change in policy, but we are prepared to do this quickly. Second piece of our new posture would be on vaccine test. We would move to encouraging vaccination with the use of the wellness credit. In other words, if you're vaccinated, you continue to receive your wellness credit, which is $250 benefit per year, but we would no longer require a weekly test. New employees, however, would be required to provide proof of vaccination. So this obviously is moving us more toward normalized operations. Our financial outlook has not changed. We still maintain a $26.9 million reserve, and will include the additional $25 million in ERAP funding in the next review. However, with that reserve, just keep in mind all of the potential calls against that reserve, from ramping up the Crisis Intervention Center, as we've already proposed, permanent supportive housing that may be discussed today, additional CSP investments as safety net providers, and then, of course, Grady, the support in the conversation just concluded. So that all being said, we remain optimistic at this point, but still cautious. We may have some inconsistencies in mask. We've managed through that before, so I think that's expected in this return to normal operations. And the primary challenge that we have right now, in addition to moving forward on all these other things, is managing this changing labor environment, which Grady just described from their perspective, and we are moving to finalize additional compensation enhancements for our employees for your consideration in the very near future. So with that, Mr. Chairman, we're ready to take any questions from the material that's been provided, or Matt, if you want to highlight any of the items.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. Just page 3 in your packet, you'll see major takeaway. Just wanted to make sure we highlight the fact that boosters are the way to go ahead and defend individuals from severe health impacts as well as death. And you'll see up there the unvaccinated population is still 49% of our new cases, 91% of our new hospitalizations, and 96% of our new deaths. So those are things that we're concerned that we want to make sure we get your help in amplifying that message. On page 6 in your packet, you'll see the new information that the CDC has for determining guidance when it comes to masking. That's what's led the county manager and the others in the C-suite to make the recommendation that you heard today. We can further discuss this at a later time. We know that the hour is late at this moment, but I just want to give that to you for reference. And the final piece is on page 12 in your packet. You'll see that we are offering incentives at all of our vaccination sites, mobile as well as fixed sites. You'll see the total amount of vaccinations that we've accomplished thus far, as well as boosters and mobile doses. Want to highlight our continued partnership with Atlanta Public Schools, as well as Fulton County Public Schools. And finally, the Hawks, which we are being able to go ahead and offer vaccination events at their different activities at the arena. Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Ellis?
Yeah, just a couple of quick things on page 26 with the news stuff that you recommended, or I guess it's just going to go into force. Is that kind of the way you're positing this?
We have done it by board vote previously, Commissioner Ellis, so if there's a necessity to take a vote, we could do that, or we can simply obviously implement these changes.
Okay. I guess my only comment would really be on bullet points 2 and 3. And really on the new employee still providing proof of vaccination, to me, I feel like we ought to just go ahead and do away with that at this stage of the game as well. Given the labor challenges we're facing, also, you know, given some of the way some of these roles are and their level of interaction, I just think it's just an extra administrative step that's probably not necessary at this stage. So I would recommend that we remove that requirement. And then on bullet point 2, you know, I understand that the courts can generally dictate whatever they want to do, I guess, on the mask mandate. So, but I don't necessarily understand is that the same with the tax office and the sheriff, or is this something that's under our purview?
We believe that both of those elected officials have the ability to set their own guidelines in their offices.
Okay, but on the tax office, not when it relates to people coming in and accessing services. That's our purview.
Well, his expressed desire is to have his employees masked and the public optional.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
All right, Commissioner Hall.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Let me see, on page, I can't find I think this is page 6, yes. It says people with symptoms, a positive test, and exposure to someone with COVID-19 should wear a mask. And it just made me think about, I just got a message the other day that one of our seniors at a senior center tested positive for COVID and was hospitalized. And there were other seniors that were in close proximity to her, and so they have to be tested and quarantined and everything. And I know because I'm always going places where there are large crowds of people, everybody wants to hug, and I want to hug them. I'll be wearing my mask to just keep everyone safe. But what I want to know, how much should people do as far as wearing their mask? Because everybody is out more and we're congregating together in small spaces. I was in a meeting the other day in a very tiny room with the NAACP, and we were just all crowded in there, some wearing masks, some not. And so what would you recommend as far as wearing the mask?
I believe our district health director, Dr. Paxton's on the line. I think it probably should be on the
Yes, I'm here.
Thank you.
So, yeah, what's basically new about the recommendations is that they're trying to incorporate so many different things like hospitalizations and personal risk. And so what is recommended is that everyone should be making this a decision based on their personal risk. If you are in a county that has low transmission and low rates of hospitalization, then really you have that leeway of deciding what you want to do. If you are, obviously, if you have some level of immunocompromise, you should absolutely be wearing a mask when you are indoors in a public place. If you are otherwise healthy, you have more of a discretion with that. So for example, if you have to deal with what is your level of risk tolerance. For example, I will wear, if you see me in Kroger, you're going to see me with my mask on because I feel that that's important. But what this is trying to get people to do is to think about their own personal risk in conjunction with what the county levels of transmission are. So that's why if people go to the CDC site, they really try to break it down, but keep it simple by whether or not low, medium, or high transmission community, and what your own personal risks are.
Thank you, Dr. Paxton. And my last question is about what I keep reading in the media, new studies bring BA.2 variant into sharper focus. And I would like for you to speak on that because I keep seeing things like this particular statement right here. It says, on the heels of concerning new lab and animal experience suggesting that BA.2 may be capable of causing more severe disease than the original Omicron strain, 2 new studies are helping to show how well human immunity is defending against this strain in the real world. But BA.2 is about 30% more transmissible than the original Omicron variant. So can you speak to any information that you have about that particular variant?
Sure. What I know about that variant, sort of lines up with a couple of things. I think it's pretty clear that it is a bit more, as you said, about 30% more transmissible than the original Omicron variant. However, looking at other countries, for example, in South Africa, where the original Omicron really first made itself known, they have not been seeing more increases with the in hospitalizations. And so I think that we can look upon this as, we're kind of treating it at both the local and the DPH level as something to keep an eyes on, but we're not actually seeing, first of all, we're not seeing many cases of the B2 variant, but we are keeping an eye on all of these. I think that what's important to keep in mind about about this variant and any future variants is that we now kind of have an on-off mask pathway that the CDC has provided to us. And so we'll be continuing to monitor these very important variables, to have us prepared if another surge should happen or if there should be another variant. And what's particularly important, and which made me really happy to see in the new CDC recommendations, was this inclusion of hospitalizations. Because what we do know and have known for a number of months now is that when you're in a situation when 75% of your ICU beds are filled, in the next 2 weeks, you should expect to see that you're going to have about 12,000 extra deaths that were as a direct result of not having access to ICU care. And when you're in a situation which has occurred during the Delta surge and the Omicron surge, in which some areas had 100% of their ICU beds filled, what they see is like into the 2 weeks following, 80,000 extra deaths. So I'm just saying that I'm really happy that we have these new recommendations that take all that into account. So I firmly believe that we are in a much better position than we were at this time last year, and particularly with the number of people that have some level of immunity, hopefully, because they were vaccinated and boosted, and also there's a certain bit of immunity that comes from having had COVID. So I think that we're in a better position than we were in the future, but we still want to keep hammering on the same things that we know, is that you need to get vaccinated, get boosted, and examine your personal risk, and when you're aware, and decide, make decisions about when you need to mask up.
Thank you, Dr. Paxton, and I'm looking forward to hopefully seeing that we don't have this BA.2 increase in Atlanta and Fulton County, because it's being said that even as COVID-19 cases have been dropping around the world, the relative proportion of cases caused by BA.2 has been increasing, and it is outcompeting the original Omicron strain in at least 43 countries, prompting fears of another devastating pandemic wave. So I'm hoping that it does not come into the United States like that, and we are counting on you to keep us updated. Thank you so much.
Vice Chair Hausman.
Yes, good to see you. First of all, I want to thank you for getting the test kits out to the senior centers, and then thank you for providing them to our commission offices too. And as I was distributing them out, I found out that senior centers weren't getting them, and so y'all jumped right on that, and I really appreciate that quick response because they were very appreciative of the kits. I do have a question about the rental assistance program, though, or just housing assistance. We're starting to get some calls from seniors, especially in the community, that have been given pretty high rent increases as their rents are renewed, and unaffordable increases. And so I'm just curious, are we seeing a lot of that in the community? Is that common? What are folks on fixed incomes to do when they're, faced with a huge increase in their living expense that they probably don't have the resources to cover that increase?
Vice Chair, we are seeing across the county the impact of increased rents for all age groups, and we are providing any type of resource that we can. There are no specific programs to address the increased rent. Unfortunately, many of the programs for seniors that provide housing are currently at capacity, but yet still we do connect seniors to any sort of program that we know of through our Senior Services Department. But there is no specific solution for the amount of rent that we have seen across the county as it relates to increases that landlords are proposing.
Well, and I can appreciate that in some respects, but then I think that this is a problem that we're going to see more of. And I'm really concerned. I mean, if you are not a senior citizen, you're probably able to handle it better than if, moving would be a real hardship, for example, if you're in your 70s or 80s. So I guess my ask here is to really focus on this issue, see what sort of problem there might be brewing, because that could be a huge problem if, in fact, landlords are demanding high rents that folks can't afford and they have nowhere to go. We already have homeless problems. We already have host problems. That, I'm just hopeful that this is isolated and not something that's going to be more and more common, but I do think it's something we need to pay attention to.
Yes, ma'am. I'll look into it.
Thank you.
Commissioner Arrington.
Thank you. I just wanted to follow up with Alton. We spoke earlier. I know we had our courts working with people that were getting evicted. And I've asked now for the last 2 meetings to have our courts work with people who are being foreclosed. We have $354 million. I'm a little frustrated because the first time I asked, I was told that he would have an answer in 2 weeks, and then when 2 weeks came, the last meeting, he told me he'd have an answer at this meeting. Then I asked this morning, and he said he'd have an answer this weekend. Then later, he told my chief of staff that he didn't understand what I was asking for, Mr. Manager. And so I'm asking for the same relief for homeowners that we gave to renters. We had our courts work with the people who were being evicted to stop those evictions so that they could stay in their homes. There's $354 million available for people to stay in their homes. There are thousands of cases across the street where people's homes are being foreclosed on every day. I have at least 10 of them myself in my role as an attorney. I'm frustrated that we're now 6 weeks later and there are people that have already been foreclosed on. And if we didn't understand the instructions 6 weeks ago, I don't understand why we didn't ask then instead of putting me off for 6 weeks. And then now coming back and saying, oh, and so we had a talk earlier, so I think perhaps we're on the same page now, Mr. Manager, but I might need you to make sure, because when we come back in 2 weeks, I need an answer. I need to know what our courts are doing to help people not have their houses foreclosed on. There's $354 million available right now. And I can't understand why we would work with our courts to stop people from getting evicted, but not do the same for people whose homes are being foreclosed on. And so if someone can help me understand why we would differentiate those two types of people, why we would help renters and not homeowners, then maybe I could be quiet and move on. But unless someone, so is there a reason why we would help renters and not homeowners?
Thank you. So, thank you, Commissioner Arrington. I will most certainly contact DCA as well as the courts to determine how we might be able to assist with foreclosure mitigation is what you're describing. It's the same process that we intervene with staff at the courthouse. So I will research that, and before the next meeting, I'll provide a memo to you.
Thank you, but that doesn't help the people that got foreclosed on for the last 6 weeks.
Yes, sir.
That I've been putting off. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Manager, continue. On 17.
If there are any questions about it doesn't sound like there is, about the E-route program. So that'll continue as is. And again, we'll cinch this up around mortgage assistance as well. Are there any further questions relative to the reopening status? If not, I think it'd probably be most preferred by staff if the board would take a vote on the recommendations on page 25 and 26 relative to mask as well as vaccination changes.
Do you want to be heard, Commissioner House?
Yeah, I was going to make a motion that we accept those recommendations and that we also drop the requirement for vaccinations for new employees in addition.
Wait, so is a motion to, are you?
The page is not on the screen anymore. I believe it was 19, but I can't remember the number.
I'll second.
That's page 26.
Thank you, Mr. Manager.
25 and 26. So 25, you're okay. On 26, where are you? You want to, on 26, what do you want to do?
Yeah, accept the recommendations and add and change that vaccinations are no longer required for new employees.
So everything as is except for the third bullet point on page 26?
Yes, sir.
Correct? All right,
Change that to not required.
we just strike it. Okay, we just strike it. Is that okay, just strike it?
As long as it's not required, yes, that's fine.
All right, your second is okay with that? All right, motion on the floor, properly moved and seconded to accept the recommendations on pages 25 and 26, with the exception of the third bullet point on, excuse me, on page 26. That addresses the question of new employees being required to provide proof of vaccination or seek a medical religious exemption via DCRC. That will no longer be. All right, let's vote, please.
And the vote is open. And the motion passes, 6 yeas, 1 abstention.
All right, it's 1:24. I'll entertain a motion to recess for lunch. Executive session, items of real estate, litigation, and personnel. Madam Clerk?
And the vote is open. And the motion passes unanimously.
And we have a long executive session agenda from the county attorney's office. It's 1:24, so my goal is to have us back by 2:30. Thank you.
You're prepared for your financial future at aceyourretirement.org.
in commemoration of the Macedonia African Methodist Cemetery.